Well, we're live. I'm gonna double check to make sure we're live. Always, you never know what's gonna happen with technology now. Okay, yeah, we are live. Hello, everybody. I'm Tate Hieronymus. I am hosting this whole event. I want to say thank you for coming, and I hope you guys enjoy listening to the speakers that we have tonight. They're all great researchers and speakers, so I'm very excited as much as you are. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the Master of Ceremonies, the man himself, RPG.
Yeah.
RPG, what's up, buddy?
Tate the Great. It is good to see you again, sir. How are you? How are you?
Good. I love anything we can do together in Bigfoot. I just have a blast with you.
Well, you remember when we fell in love, right? It has something to do with this conference, does it not?
It does.
I remember when Tate was just a young man, hot on the scene, wishing to be a part of one of the greatest TV shows about Bigfoot of all time. Finding Bigfoot might be a little bit biased. And you know those guys that, like, you go to a concert and they follow you everywhere, and every time you turn around you can see them and they're in the background with these big eyes? Well, Tate did a wonderful job of tracking me down and showing me just how passionate he is about this subject, not to mention Bluff Creek and what we're going to discuss today. And then we got you in the episode, didn't we, sir? We got you in the final episode of Finding Bigfoot.
I'm so blessed. I thank you every day, and you know that's not a joke. So
no. Well, hey, you're awesome. You deserve to be there. Passion should be rewarded, you know. So, absolutely, and thank you for having us today, man. Small round of applause for Tate the Great.
I'm just human like you.
I'm not human. That's the problem.
Well, RPG. Without further ado, I'll let you take it away.
Awesome, bud. Awesome. All right, guys. Why are we here, right? Patterson Gimlin 58th anniversary Bigfoot mini conference. Thank you so much, Tate, for bringing us together. I'm willing to bet 5 out of 10 people, and probably more, the reason they got into Bigfooting is because of this amazing piece of footage. Am I wrong, right? Usually people either have some kind of encounter or experience, or they saw this and it just turned them on. Like, what turns you on, you know? We love Bigfoot, and we love the fact that what we're going to discuss today may very well be the greatest documentation of a cryptid of all time. Now, for a lot of us, we believe that it's real. Some people are on the fence and some people are skeptics. We are going to discuss a little of it all, but I want the audience to understand that the majority of this is to respectfully discuss this piece of wonderful footage shot by Roger and Bob that has made us love this just this topic so damn much. So for those of you that don't know, right, so October 20, 1967, these two gentlemen, they go out. Why these two gentlemen? Why is what they were able to accomplish possible, from my very humble perspective? Okay, in my opinion, Roger and Bob are the two greatest unknown folklore heroes of all time, or America. Now, some people know about them, but you know what I mean? I mean mainstream. I mean, there should be movies about these guys. This is when men were men, but they liked women a lot better. You know, like, these were manly men. They were trained pugilists, boxers. They boxed the hell out of you. And these aren't giant men. These are little men. I think Bob's what, like 5'8" at the most, and Roger was 5'2". So, like, they whoop your butt, man. If the MMA was around when they were around, they would have been champions of their sport. Now, on top of that, which obviously makes you very tough, gives you the grit and the passion you need to do hard things, like traveling extensively in back country for extended periods of time. Now, on top of that, they were both rodeo superstars. They could ride horses. They could break horses, you know, and both of them are very talented. And this is where you can agree or disagree. I'd even say Bob was a little more talented. I'm just going to throw that out there. Bob was like, it was like they were two different weight classes, right? But horses, horseback superstars, sharpshooters. If Bob wanted to make that shot, if he really thought he was in danger, he would have made that shot. I would have bet one of few people in the world on horseback, even if he was moving, even if the horse was spooked, Bob could have made the shot, but he didn't, right? What does that tell you? That tells you that what he was looking at, he believed was very, very, very real. Now, on top of that, they're true American cowboys, and with the greatest respect that we discuss them today, and you know, God bless Bob. Bob's still with us. I think he just turned 94 or something. And you be careful. Even at 94, don't leave him alone with your wife or your girlfriend, because they'll be walking off with him with a smile and a nephew. Like, dude, he is a gentleman in a way that I think all men should aspire to be like, a true Pacific Northwest gentleman. But anyway, they're amazing men. And I think it would take an amazing person to accomplish what they accomplished. And that's why, one of the many reasons I believe that what they captured on that amazing day is true, because it took that kind of a badass to achieve what they did. Now, anyway, I could ramble, I could talk, but we're all excited. We have someone. Now, I've never met Emily before, and her last name's Fleer. I know. Anyway, I don't speak French. I can say femme la bouche, because that's what my French teacher used to tell me all the time. Shut your mouth, Ryan. Femme la bouche. But the Forest Flair is her website. She is dedicated. She is driven. She is the best hair person in the business. Wait till you see this hair. Prepare to be jealous. But once again, we go back to people, like I was saying with Tate, passion and grit. Who wants this? Who loves this said subject? Not only loves it, but loves it enough to want to educate and inspire people to get back into nature and to create their own Patterson Gimlin film. So without further ado, I'm very excited to hear her talk for the first time, and I hope you are as well. Ladies and gentlemen, oh, I'm sorry, I almost skipped a major part, and I apologize. I'm just so excited to let Emily chat. We lost someone, not to get emotional, but we lost the top of our field basically this year, and it broke a lot of people's hearts, because we don't have a lot of people in academia that defend what we believe to be true. And Dr. Jeff Meldrum was, for everyone that met him, for everyone that worked with him, for everyone that was lucky enough to steal a minute with him, and I've done so many conferences with him now, and for some reason I was always the guy that either picked him up from the airport or would ride to and from the airport with him. So I got this like special time, and you don't want him to know like what a fanboy you are of him, but I didn't care, and he didn't care. He was such a lovely human being. So we're just going to take 10 seconds and we're just going to think about Dr. Jeff Meldrum and just honor him for a second, because the field lost someone very, 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 very important. And I hope and pray that somebody comes along to rise into that position. They will never replace Jeff, but they can. That's a big shoe to fill, but we need that. We need more people in academia. So for 10 seconds, we're just going to sit in silence and remember one of the best that ever lived. To you, Dr. Meldrum, we love you. I know you're smiling at us up there, and we hope we figure it out for you. Now, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we're bringing on the fresh blood. We're bringing on Emily, and she's going to rock the stage and rock the mic like a vandal. So without further ado, Tate, please bring on the lovely Miss Emily Fleer.
Thank you so much, RPG, for that awesome intro. I hope I live up to the expectation.
Of course you will. Of course you will. You deserve it. You deserve to be here. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's so awesome meeting you and the rest of the speakers here today. I'm really excited to kind of chat a little bit with you guys about Sasquatch and technology. But before that, I'll introduce myself a little bit. I'm Emily Fleur. I'm founder of the Forest Fleur. It's a research organization dedicated to educating and increasing public understanding of the Sasquatch species in order to inspire habitat preservation. And so I do quite a bit of field work as well as researching behind the scenes when I'm unable to get out in the field. And so over the past 2 years, I've kind of noticed that Sasquatch and technology really go hand in hand. And I've spoken with Tate about this as well, because I know that he is really good at combining technology and Sasquatch research. But I wanted to start out with the PG film, because at that time, the technology was very limited. So, how did this all come to be? How did this evidence arise? What is the Patterson Gimlin film? Let's talk about it. And then we can talk about how we can use today's technology to sort of recreate that experience and have our own PG moment. So if we look at the different types of evidence that exists today regarding Sasquatch, we have footprints, we have hair samples, we have fingerprints, we have nesting sites, we have eyewitness accounts, audio recordings, and repeat activity. The first being footprint casts. The Patterson Gimlin film really proves that footprint casts can actually tell us a lot about Sasquatch, right? It's not just an impression in the ground. It's not just a hunk of plaster. There's actually anatomy within these casts that tell us the science behind Sasquatch. So I actually have one of the PG casts here today to show you. And it's kind of hard to see, but when I flip it this way, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So there's an anatomical feature within a Sasquatch foot called midfoot flexibility. This is present in other apes. And basically it means that the middle of their foot is very flexible, where humans would bend our feet at the ball of the toe to provide traction. Sasquatch are bending their feet in the middle. And because of this anatomy, when they step, they leave this sort of mound of sand or dirt wherever they're stepping. And because a footprint cast is a negative of the print, it shows up as an indentation. At the time of the PG film, this anatomy was not widely known by science. It was just in the beginning stages of being discovered. So midfoot flexibility in apes was not a common knowledge in 1967. So the fact that these prints contain this anatomy is really, really amazing. And it just shows how credible the film is. Another piece of evidence that backs up this film are the fingerprints. You can also have dermal ridges, as they call them, on your toes, and those are present in some of the PG film casts. You can actually see the little lines within the PG film cast toes. So fingerprints are a really great way to tell if a Sasquatch print is real or not. Of course, somebody handling the print could leave fingerprints, but if it is just present on the toe part, it's a good indicator that the print is real. So at that time, that was a major piece of evidence. And the only thing that leaves fingerprints are apes and koala bears. So unless a giant koala bear left these tracks and has human-shaped feet, I think we can assume that these came from Patty. So these tracks were cast about 9 days after the Patterson Gimlin film was shot. And there was a series of about 10 casts, all looking a little bit different based on the way Patty was stepping. And so between the footprint casts and the dermal ridges, those are just two pieces of evidence that really back up the PG film. Something else that backs it up are the eyewitness accounts. Not only is there footage of this Sasquatch, but there were two people that witnessed this event. Eyewitness accounts are super important. Unfortunately, they're not taken very seriously by the scientific community in general, which is funny because, you know, law enforcement uses eyewitness testimonies to solve crimes, right? Eyewitness testimonies are extremely important in every other field except seemingly Sasquatch research. But to us true researchers, eyewitness reports are very, very important. And being that there is footage to back up Roger and Bob's stories, I think this is a great indicator that the film is real. Another thing that I wanted to mention about the PG film site is something else that backs up its credibility, which is repeat sightings. So sightings in this area of Humboldt County, California, have continued up until this day. So I wanted to just read a quick sighting for you. This is fall of 2023. I'm a Class A truck driver, and this went down while I was heading toward the coast on Highway 299 out in Humboldt County, Northern California. It was somewhere between 2 and 3 a.m. on a Thursday. I was starting to nod off, so I pulled over just east of Willow Creek to grab a quick nap. It was cold as hell, so I kicked on the defroster and set my lunch on the dash to warm up while I shut my eyes for a bit. Had the windows cracked just a little. Maybe 10, 15 minutes after I dozed off, I woke up to this thud, something big walking up to my truck. Before I could sit up, the door handle rattled. Whatever it was tried to open my door. Thank God I'd locked it. Right then, I just froze. I don't know how to explain it. I felt like something deep down told me, don't move. Whatever that is, it isn't safe. It jiggled the handle a couple of more times and then let out a really deep, heavy grunt, like it was frustrated that it couldn't get in. About that time, another big rig came rumbling down the street. As soon as that happened, whatever was out there took off running. So this just goes to show that sightings in this area continue today. And so we can kind of use the PG film to piece together a bit of a formula for Sasquatch research, right? Because the main forms of evidence, again, are footprints, hair samples, fingerprints, nests, eyewitness accounts, audio recordings, and repeat activity. So in order to sort of lend a story credit, it would be great to have multiple of these forms of evidence and combine them in order to prove credibility. We can start to take these pieces of evidence and use AI and different technologies to research Sasquatch in a better way. So back in 1967, they had their video camera that was amazing on Roger and Bob's part. They were out there actually looking for Sasquatch. So that's another indicator, I think, toward the film's credibility. Some people may argue otherwise, but I do feel that, when you look at people like Dr. Jane Goodall, God rest her soul, Diane Fossey, it took these researchers months to actually find an ape to study in the wild. And so it's going to take us a long time to get close enough to a Sasquatch to actually study them. And so how can we speed up this process? How can we optimize our research and make sure that we're choosing the right locations, that we're bringing along the right gear? We want to make sure that we're being consistent with our research. So that means visiting the same area frequently and maybe even on a scheduled basis. For most folks, this is really difficult because most of us hold full-time jobs, but we can start small and we can use AI to help us with our research. And so that's what I've been doing over at the Forest Fleur. For the past 2 years, I've been working on a mapping project. A lot of this work is manual for now because, unfortunately, AI can't do everything yet. But I do think it's really important to utilize technology in our research. Unfortunately, with the progression of AI right now, any sort of video or photo evidence of a Sasquatch is likely going to be dismissed. And that is, perfectly understandable. Unfortunately, we probably will need a specimen or a combination of key evidence pieces in order to prove their existence. But what I've been working on is this huge mapping project where I'm identifying credible eyewitness sightings across the United States, plotting them on a map, and categorizing them by color. So if somebody saw a black Sasquatch, I have a black Sasquatch icon on my map that represents that sighting. When you click into it, it'll bring up the year, the date, the sighting, and so on and so forth. So I have come across dark colored Sasquatch, blonde Sasquatch, red ones, gray ones. And someone actually even reported recently that they saw a gray one with a greenish tint. So maybe it was spending too much time out in the bogs. But by plotting the points this way, I can actually see kind of an overview of where certain Sasquatch might be traveling. So if there's a blonde one up in this region here, and then 2 years later, it's seen 25 miles away, that's most likely the same Sasquatch and not two different Sasquatch. Now, how do I level up this project and take it a step further? I think the key is using technology. So in order to do this, I've been working on creating an ideal habitat profile. So sort of generating a habitat probability map. This includes researching different food sources, different resources within the area, and AI can help you to do this. So if you ask ChatGPT, hey, what are the annual deer patterns in, X county in Wisconsin, right? It'll be able to kind of pull up that information. You can click into the sources and verify them yourself, and then you can grab that information and go from there. Now, what we can do once we compile this sort of ideal habitat profile, which may include berries, deer patterns, right? Small mammals, water sources, fish, right? Any sort of food source that Sasquatch might prefer. We can also take a look at wind patterns and weather and seasonal rounds within that area. Once we've gathered all of that, we can actually feed that information into an AI robot that will then take the ideal habitat profile and my map of Sasquatch credible sightings and blend them together to suggest areas of research. So this is a project that I've been working on over the past 2 years, and I've been having so much fun with it. It's very difficult to program the AI to sort of think in that context, but I think I'm almost there with it, and it has been able to suggest some really great research spots for me by combining the habitat ideal profile with the local sightings in the area. By doing this, we can better pinpoint areas to research and make sure that we are not wasting our time on an area that may not be viable for Sasquatch at all. I think another really great way we could use AI is actually out in the field. So if we take a recorder with us, it can actually replace a notebook. When Dr. Jane Goodall was researching the chimps, she was writing everything down in her notebook. And although that is an amazing, wonderful thing, because we have every single movement of these creatures cataloged, with Sasquatch, being that they are so rare and they live in such small groups, we're not going to be able to study them, a group of 20 Sasquatch, the same way that you would study a group of 20 chimpanzees. We might get a glimpse of one Sasquatch, and it could be a fleeting moment. So it would be great to have our recorders in the field and be able to live update as we're observing, even if there's not a Sasquatch present, just kind of saying, hey, I'm out in the field today. It's quiet. I heard this noise. I didn't hear anything last time. Here's the weather conditions. And then you can upload that recording into AI, and it can create a summary for you of your field work. So I think that although this can be done manually, most people just don't have the bandwidth or the time to be documenting everything that they see out in the field. So this is just another way that, we can use technology to do this. In addition to using an AI tool like what I've been building on my end, you can also use apps, technological apps, to help you out in the field. So I know 3D scanners are very popular among researchers who are, finding footprints out in the field. But I did want to mention two other applications that I think are really helpful for Sasquatch research. The first one being All Trails, which kind of shows you, different trails in your area, what's accessible, where to park, do they cost anything? Are they open year round? And something that I personally love to do with the All Trails app is I like to filter them to the lowest reviews. Normally, you'd be doing the opposite when on All Trails because you want to find a really great hike. But I like to find the worst hikes that everyone hates, because that means that there'll be less people on the hike. They're usually very overgrown, not easily accessible. And most of the time, the lowest reviewed trails have sort of a mud season, and that's a great time to go out and look for prints. So that would be another way that we can utilize technology in our research today, is just kind of seeing which trails are not occupied and going to those trails, because that's that kind of increases the probability of seeing a Sasquatch as opposed to sticking to a very populated trail. Although I will say there are still plenty of sightings along those very popular walkable trails in many areas. I'm always shocked to see that on the map, but something I like to remember is that Sasquatch is not walking around with a map. They are just following food sources. So occasionally they do bump into some more populated areas. But I love the All Trails app for that reason. I can kind of go on there, target my research area, and then see where I can go hiking, where I won't be running into human interference. Another app that I wanted to point out is called OnX. It's a hunting app, and it basically shows you detailed private land ownership. So you can kind of base your hikes around that. It's an app intended for hunting. So it'll show you areas that are accessible to you. It'll show you where those areas back up onto private property, which I think is really, really crucial when you're researching Sasquatch. The last thing you want to do is bump into somebody's private property and get yourself in trouble. But I also do think it's kind of important to maybe consider sticking near private property. Of course, you never want to trespass, but if you do go to an area that's close by to private property, I almost wonder if there could be an advantage there, because maybe there are less people. Maybe it's a property that, is acres and acres, and maybe there's a farm nearby, or, deer are grazing because the property is mowed by the owner. It could be a good place for a Sasquatch to hang out. And as I've been doing my mapping project, I have come across so many stories where property owners have repeat activity. And it's so funny because I think to myself, oh my gosh, here I am out in the field looking for Sasquatch, and this person has them right in their backyard, during certain times of the year. But, unfortunately, a lot of these rural private property owners, they, maybe they don't have the funds to be, investing in all of this night vision gear and cameras and, things like that. Or maybe they just can't be bothered. I do come across people who say they have pictures and videos, aren't willing to share. I'm not sure if they actually do, but I do think that private property can be an advantage for Sasquatch researchers, and most of us don't have access to it. So I think OnX is a great app to look into to kind of see how close you can get to private property in wilderness areas where there could be game sort of frolicking about for Sasquatch to come and hunt. So those are just some of my tips on how we can use technology to sort of help us in our Sasquatch research today. I know it is really disappointing that, AI has made it sort of impossible for us to prove their existence through video and pictures. And I myself was really disappointed by that when I started seeing all of these videos of like two Sasquatch clinking a beer around a campfire, although they are very, very funny. It is disappointing for a researcher because I've always thought that I might be able to prove Sasquatch's existence if I was able to get a video like the Patterson Gimlin film. But unfortunately, in this day and age, I do think that it's going to take more than that. And so my sort of goal out in the field is to, start to get closer to Sasquatch, right? So, collecting their footprints, collecting hair samples, recording vocalizations. If we can come up with a huge database of, evidence and activity, maybe, we could get to know the area, get to know their patterns, get to know their movements, and then predict where they are. And if we hang around the area long enough, perhaps we could find one that has, naturally died of, natural causes, right? That would be the ideal. That's probably not how it's going to happen. But that's at least how I'd like to go about my research. But I think by using technology in combination with old school field techniques, that's how I'm kind of going about this. And I'm kind of just trying to figure out how to leverage this, what seems to be a problem in the Sasquatch research field, and sort of spin that into a positive, right? So we can't prove it with pictures or video anymore, but maybe we can actually utilize AI to help us in our research. So right now I am using a tool that is taking that ideal habitat profile, merging it with local sightings, and predicting areas where I should research. And I just wanted to share with all of you that this will be available to you pretty soon. I am working on finalizing it so that I can publish it and we can all use it together. Unfortunately, there are some costs related to it. AI kind of goes off of usage. So I'm just navigating that. But I do really want to be able to release this so that we can all use this out in the field and basically have a little AI bot that will predict where we can see a Sasquatch. And we can all test it out and see what we come up with. Maybe one of us will be the next Roger or Bob. All right, Tate, back to you.
Well, I'm Tate Harmonious, and I have beautiful hair, and I like to wear alpaca sweaters in the middle of the summer. Why? Because I can. Emily, where do I even begin? First of all, I can't believe I've never heard you talk. I apologize. You're amazing. Every conference I do, everywhere I go, I say we need more dynamic women in the field, and I didn't know there were so many good ones. So I can't wait to hear Nikki talk next, but like, wow. I just want to go over a couple things. First of all, never think you know everything, right? You're like apes and koala, the only two. I didn't know the koala was in there. I want to thank you for teaching me that. That is amazing. What else did I write down? Basically everything. I can't believe it. Can you please talk for another 2 hours so all of us can just sit here like this?
Hey, RPG, your mic is muted.
Ha! My mic was muted and I was talking the whole time. All right. Well, I just ate up some time. Emily, I was just singing your praise. So I'm going to try and go through it real quick. I apologize for that. It's my 400th time doing this. So even then you can make mistakes. I love the All Trails app and talking about researching the ones that are less traveled and have less written about them because they tend to have muddy seasons. Thank you for that. Those are little things, right? Those are little things that you log on to listen to something like this, and you're hoping somebody gives you something that gets you a little bit closer or gets you, you know what I mean? And then on X, do I still have it? I'm still talking detailed private land ownership, so you know when you're on private or you know when you're on state land. Because yeah, there's a lot of people cohabitating. And why are they cohabitating? If these brilliant ambush animals are smart, then they're going to know when to walk the line and when not. As far as I'm concerned, state parks, national parks, right when they close down, why is it there's all this action that happens? When is somebody going to put a GoPro cam in the trash can? So when it opens up, it's like, gotcha. Anyway, you're just what I said before too is I always say we need more dynamic women in the field, and I'm so sorry I didn't know about you until now. You're amazing, and the field is better off with you in it. Your mapping project is spectacular. I love using AI to dial it in. That's what I've been using to dial it in because I think they go underground, which I know is a point of contention. But with AI, I've been able to map out the best possible hotspot. So your advice is sound. Use it as a tool, but with a grain of salt. So anyway. Yeah, that was spectacular. My only problem with that is I wish you would have gone on for another hour and a half. So shame on you. Talk more next time. But it was an honor. I hope everybody enjoyed that from M. And to keep this thing moving along, because it is Sunday Fun Day, we're going to bring on Nikki next. And what can I say about Nikki? What is your podcast? Sasquatch. I know it's Sasquatch something. Another person that I never met. Sasquatch Secrets, founded in 2021. This is another powerful voice in the space. Someone that speaks with confidence. Someone that researches. And what I really like about your podcast is that you talk about the liars and the charlatans and the people that are disrupting the space, which Emily led to. She talked about how AI is now really disrupting the case because what's real anymore? What isn't? It's almost getting impossible to figure that out. So, like I said, we need more dynamic voices in the space. And as we all know, if you're a researcher worth anything, who has a better chance of finding or having an interaction in the woods? It is a woman before it is a man. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring on Nikki, and I'm sorry about last name, Cologne, K. I saw you tell you how to pronounce it in Facebook. Koh, Co, and then Lone, I believe. But Tate, bring her on. Let's keep rocking this thing.
You got it. You got it right there, Ryan. Cologne. Yep, that's me. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me on. My name is Nikki Cologne, and I have a channel called Sasquatch Secrets. On my show, I'm dedicated to uncovering the truth about Bigfoot. My mission is really simple. It's to provide a place where truth matters, where my research, where, we provide evidence that's valued above clicks and views, and where hoaxes don't get to take away from the real investigations. It happens all over the community, and Bigfoot's a mystery and deserves honesty, integrity, and open-minded curiosity. So that's what I strive to bring through my show, and hopefully, we learn along the way. So it is about that honesty and curiosity, and wherever that may lead us. You can go ahead and bring that up now, Tate. Oh, you're listening to me? There he goes. Oh, he's going to switch me around a little bit. But so I dedicated this to Walking with Patty, the film that changed everything. And over 50 years ago, on an ordinary fall day in Bluff Creek, California, a short piece of grainy 16 millimeter film was recorded. Less than a minute long, yet it became one of the most debated, analyzed, celebrated, and criticized pieces of footage in history. Some people look at the Patty Gimlin film and see undeniable proof of a large unknown creature, something that walks like us but is not us. Others see a man in a costume, an elaborate hoax created for fame, money, or entertainment. And you know what? Both views have valid reasons behind them. This film has incredible arguments supporting its authenticity and equally compelling points to raise doubts. And for me, that's okay. It's okay. What's fascinating is this. After more than half a century, we still don't agree. Why? Why is that? Because the film can't be fully retested. Technology keeps advancing. New theories keep surfacing, and personal beliefs influence interpretation. The mystery lives on because no one has ever been able to fully prove it or disprove it. But here's something even more important. Whether you believe Patty was real or a person in a suit, this film changed everything. It sparked modern Bigfoot research. It inspired documentaries, podcasts, TV shows. It brought believers and skeptics into the same conversation. It united people through curiosity. I'll be honest with you, this film changed me too. The first time I saw it was like many of you. I was skeptical, intrigued, unsure what to think, but I couldn't stop analyzing every frame, step by step, every gesture. That curiosity eventually led me here, you know, uh, hosting my own show and speaking with researchers across the country and sharing stories that this film ignited. And we're not here to argue today. We're here to explore, to listen, to think, and to appreciate the legacy of the most iconic moment in Bigfoot history. Because real or not, the Patterson Gimlin film became legendary. So why the debate still 50 years plus? Let's talk about why this debate is still alive today. Because if this were simple, it wouldn't have been solved. It wouldn't have been solved years ago. We have the access to the original. We don't have access to the original film, which is one of the main points. The master copy is not available for new scientific testing. What we analyze today are copies of copies. There may be some saying they have originals, but have yet to proven that. Each generation loses clarity, detailing become open to interpretation. Everybody has their own method of looking at this film and interpreting it. So every new enhancement, frame analysis, or AI reconstruction reveals new details. Make sure here. Okay. Science has not conclusively proven or disproven the footage, even with modern tools. Conflicting experts' opinions. Some anatomists, biologists, and costume designers argue the movement, and proportions are genuine. Others insist, I see a suit or a hoax. When experts disagree, it's naturally the public does too. You know, put a thumbs up in the chat if you've seen where the film frame by frame and still can't decide what to think. You know, some people completely will believe that the footage is rare and believable, and some will still see fault in what has come out about it. You have eyewitness credibility versus evidence. Bob Gimlin has never wavered from his story. Roger Patterson passed decades ago, but his notes and interviews still fuel discussion. Still, skeptics argue memory can be flawed, motives can be influenced by behavior, and without physical proof, uncertainty remains. Emotional investment and belief systems are something that inspire us and keep us going, but believers need to have it be real. It validates years of personal research. Skeptics need it to be fake to protect science integrity. Confirmation bias exists on both sides, keeping the fire of debate alive. So the debate isn't just about the film. It's about trust, belief, science, pride, mystery. And that's why it still captivates us more than 50 years later. The real importance, the impact on the Bigfoot community, whether you think Patty is real, fake, we can all agree that this film changed everything. It's the birth of modern Bigfoot research. And before 1967, sightings were anecdotal, fragmented, and folklore-based. After the PG film, field studies, printing casts, audio recording, and databases became standard. Here I show Thomas Steenberg, one of the greats in the field today, and how he would get on that ground, put his face into that potential print, and really scientifically research and investigate anything involved in that print. Looking at every fine, minute detail he could find and documenting it. And he, like Emily had said earlier, had his field notes that he would write in every day as we were up on Mount St. Helens and document everything he found or didn't find. That's the kind of research that eventually will get us down the road, and it makes you appreciate what we have going with some of the researchers we have now who are so dedicated in throwing the ball down the field and making it really important and worthwhile. Because when you see sites like this, it gets you even more interested in the field. It makes you want to be part of it, be part of that bigger group. It also stemmed TV specials and documentaries, news footages. Patty has become a household name in cryptozoology. Films like Exists and Harry and the Hendersons owe part of their origin to the P&G film. Podcasts, including my own, continue to analyze every frame, every step and footprint, bringing people together. I was able to go to sites like the Jacko, the Wild Man of 1884 site. And it was amazing to go to where actual locations where Bigfoot was supposedly, or wild man was supposedly being seen. And it helps you develop the story and gives you a big insight into how encounters develop. The same with the Chapman homestead, the Ruby Creek incident in 1941. These are all places that you hear about when you're in the Sasquatch or Bigfoot communities, and to be able to go to these sites and experience these is beyond compare. Knowing that, it's a real place. And that's what all stemmed from the PNG film of being part of that investigation of whether or not Bigfoot is real and how can we prove that to be real. These are my sites here, Sasquatch Secrets and Sasquatch Dark Secrets. And I have my own personal take, because after decades of analyzing, one decade of analyzing the footage and speaking with other researchers and walking the woods myself, this is what I think. I think that both sides have a strong argument. Realist points, anatomy, the gait, muscle movement, witness credibility. But it all comes down to each side is reasonable on its own, because the skeptics want to see potential motives, claims of the suit, human psychology. There's a lot more, because we keep asking questions, and that's okay too. We may never know, because there's no new proof in over 50 years, and human perception and memory are imperfect. Even if proof surfaced today, public consensus would still likely split. We're always going to have both sides of that line of real and not real. Curiosity, inquiry, community, the fellowships are more important, and that's pretty big proof. I mean, you get to know some amazing people out there that you love to spend time with, and you have the same type of feelings towards the subject. It's something you can't replace. So does it matter that Patty was real or not? Not anymore, because the film itself has become legendary. The discussion, the note of respect and appreciation, because whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the impact is undeniable. People gather. We gather to listen to the encounters, the stories, in conferences held all across the U.S. So it's okay to believe it's real. You trust the movement, the proportions, the witnesses. People come out in droves to hear about Bigfoot. It's okay to believe that it's a hoax. We value scientific rigor and question motives. Always have the questions. Curiosity, fascination, passion, they bring us together. We all care deeply about exploring the unknown. And you make a lot of friends at the same time. So it remains the most analyzed, discussed Bigfoot footage ever. It inspired research, storytelling, and global conversation. It's turned folklore into phenomenon, inspiring documentaries and future generations of Bigfoot enthusiasts. So after looking at all the sides, the science, the theories, the believers, and the skeptics, Where does that leave us? The truth is simple. We may never know for sure what walked across that creek bed in 1967. And at this point, it may not even matter. What matters is the impact. The Patterson Gimlin film lit the spark that gave birth to modern Bigfoot investigation. It created a community. It inspired a movement. It challenged us to think deeper, question harder, and keep searching for answers. It's okay to believe the film is real, and it's okay to believe the film is not real. There is room for both. Because whether Patty was a creature or a costume, the film itself became bigger than the truth. It became a symbol of curiosity, a symbol of mystery, a symbol of the unknown that still costs us to go to the woods. Over 50 years later, it remains the most important incident in Bigfoot history. Not because it's proving anything, but because it made us care. And that, more than anything, is why the Patterson Gimlin film will live on forever as a legend. I'd like to, oh, I don't have it on here. I wanted to also express my condolences to the Dr. Meldrum's family, as well as Scott Violet's, who also passed from Squatch America. It's really taken its toll in the community. We loved them. We spent time with them. And it was a heartbreak when both passed. So I'd just like to express that. So thank you. And back to you, Tate or Ryan.
Nikki. Yeah, life is beautiful, wonderful, and I love your overall message. There seems to be, what is so wonderful about this piece of evidence or film or whatever you want to see it as, and it's that it's brought so many of us together. Even if you don't believe it, it's brought you into this tribe. And community, I think, is something that we're all craving. And not all of us want to go do it in church, or want to do it politically, or want to do it in these ways that seem to be more divisive these days. So in my hope, I hope, Nikki, people like you continue to lead in the space and kind of bring peace to the space, because there is a lot of animosity, and there is a lot of people that have that me first and not help, which is something I loved about Emily as well. She's doing real research, creating a real map and all. She didn't have to share that with anyone, but yet she wants to make it available to everybody. That is so profound. Open sourcing is where we all need to get to somehow, because at the end of the day, yeah, would I like to have the next Patterson Gimlin film? Heck yeah, I would. But if my research leads you to having that moment and gathering it, then I am truly happy for you. And I felt that from Emily and Nikki in terms of the way they approach research. So I want to say thank you. That's amazing. And in terms of evidence, yeah, Miss Patterson, she's got a 4x5 transparency of it that is from Bill Munn's own mouth. It is the best version you can get besides the camera original. It's the closest thing you can get to it. It's beautiful. I don't know, but I never got a chance to see it, but Bill has it. He used to have it in his office, and now he has it in his garage of all places. Put that in a special place, but it's massive, but it shows in really good detail. And at the end of the day, for people on the fence or not, it's people always ask, who do you believe in Bigfooting? Like, who's the person that you'd go, okay, I trust that they're telling the truth. Bill Munns is one of those people. I don't know of anyone that is scrutinized, has more copies of, or has seen more proof or evidence of it through the film than Bill Munns. He's the coup de grace. He's the top of the top. But anyway, that was, it's wonderful. Your background too. I want that background. So afterwards, you got to teach me how to have a comet show in the back while I'm in the dark forest telling beautiful tales about Bigfoot. It was wonderful. So thank you for your wisdom very much, Nikki. And also a little bit of evidence here, a little bit of proof. If you're a super geek about the Patterson Gimlin film, everybody loves frame 352. Frame 352. It's the it's the look. What if I was to tell you it's not frame 352? It isn't. When they originally spliced it, they forgot that they were 3 off. So it's actually 354. And you don't have to take my word for it, but like I said, who do you believe? I believe Bill Munns. So when we talk about the most famous moment from that amazing film, it's 354 that we are actually talking about. Let the comments fly with that. We'll discuss that, but you're going against Bill Munns. Good luck. Anyway, moving on, we have another amazing speaker. His name is Ron Reed. He's trailing giants, a Wisconsin boy, so I can't believe he's not here to talk Dog Man, but you could probably talk that too. But more importantly, he's good friends with Tate, and they have done some good research in Bluff Creek. They've traveled together, and obviously Tate has to pay him a lot of money to hang out with him. You know what I'm saying? But no, another great person in the space that's making waves. And so without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring on the man, the myth, Tate's bestie, Ron Reed.
Hey. How's it going, Ryan? It's been a while, man.
It's been too long. I love the beard, sir.
I need to like do some trimming. It's getting a bit
it's getting a bit patty.
Oh yeah.
Now it's an honor to be on with you. Enjoy your time, sir.
All right. Okay, so everybody, I'm going to be talking about critical thinking in the Bigfoot community. I've been a field researcher for about 15 years now. I've been getting out there into various fields throughout North America and a little bit beyond that. So I think it'll be best if we just get into it. So Tate, if you want to just pull up the slideshow or the video, and we'll go ahead and get started. Tate, pull up the video. We got to get going. Tate, you told me you wouldn't do this, that you would get the video up and we would start like it's hard. I'm in the middle of finals right now. If you can just get the video up, I'd appreciate it. Tate.
Well,
What's up? Sorry, everybody. We thought we'd do a quick bit for you.
A little bit of levity goes a long way.
Goes
a long way. No, and let's go back to what Nikki was talking about. Community. This brought us together. You two boys have been out there researching together. You're having fun. You found friendship through this. So I love it, man. I love it. You're both wild men with beautiful beards.
we try.
So I hear you two have been doing some research in the mecca of Bigfooting for most of us, which is Bluff Creek. How was that? Yeah, give us a little background on that. You know, just what you guys are up to, besides joking.
You know, I think that one of the things that we always try to do is we try to set the tone. So we try to have fun and look like unassuming campers, but then we also kind of like have these moments where we lock in and we start applying like what we've learned from other researchers. You know, Tate's been in the community and really networked with some of the best. And, you know, I've had some limited exposures, but a lot of my background comes from trying to emulate wildlife biology and apply some field practices. And I've taken some courses lately within the last few years that have helped me do like better wildlife surveys, nonlinear surveys, and like getting more involved with audio analysis and using like tools of the trade that you would find in field biology. And I think we've kind of made this like unique, like hybrid research technique of like just being interesting and catering to the curiosity of intelligent creatures out there, while also like trying to be a little bit more diligent and utilize good field practices, and thinking critically about the subject. And I think we've had a fair degree of success, specifically within the Bluff Creek area. Tate, what do you think of that? Like, what would you add?
I think for a while Bluff Creek wasn't getting a lot of exposure or having a lot of people. Probably near when we started going there. But I think over the years of us kind of just really sticking to our guns and keep headed back to that area, you know, we drew a lot of attention, probably more so than it would have gotten if we hadn't started going regularly. So it's been getting a lot of attention out there, and because of that, I think it's maybe drawing in more of a curiosity factor than it hasn't had in a long time, and you might be getting activity now because of that. So I don't know if that's the reason, but I think that's part of it. And I think Bluff Creek, regardless, is still a good area to go to. I mean, you can go a few miles and see hundreds of valleys that look different another mile down the road. It's just endless amounts of forest and acres. So it's just, and it's so hard to get out there. And so you're very limited to where you can go. So they might not even be on that particular ridge. They could be one ridge over and be there the whole time you're there. So I don't think it's necessarily squashed out, in my opinion, because I've heard that tossed around. But there's a lot of activity that does come out of there. And so that's why we keep going back.
But I like what you're saying, to go back what Emily said, right? It's all about establishing that you're not a threat. If you were to just spend time in the woods and just devote your time to it, you would begin to follow all the game trails. And if you could kind of omnisciently sit above the forest and watch, you would then learn that there are patterns. All the animals are working patterns. And I would imagine that a intelligent ambush species would be watching and know all patterns. And what you're establishing, which I believe Emily would back me up on, is a pattern. So you are, because the goal is to minimize threat, right? You get hurt. I don't care if you're a Bigfoot. If you get hurt, now you might not be able to provide for yourself or defend yourself if you need to. So I love that you guys are hitting the same spot, whether that's massaging the spot and getting more attention on it or not. I think, and please in the comments, bring it up. I think what you're doing is you're establishing yourself as an animal in that area that is a non-threat, and that will lead to a better likelihood of having an encounter or an experience with other factors involved. But I think what you're doing is great. That's great, especially bringing in field biology and as a technician and taking courses. Like, you want to hear more people doing that. So, Ron, like that's what we need in the space. No, it is. Look, I'm getting chills again. It's right. You're right. We need that, because the one thing people pick on us for is not being professional enough. But I will tell you this, and this is from the mouth of babes, from James Bobo Fay to Bindernagel, to anyone that I've interviewed and talked to. When you go out in the woods, if you think you're going to sneak up on these things, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it flat out. That all you really have to do is go out and have a damn good time. Because you know what we're all attracted to? A damn good time. Good energy, positive energy in the field. And if you go out and have a good time, like I know you two do, I want to go out with the two of you, but while you're simultaneously also researching, that's genius. See, chills all over my whole body. You guys are on it. So
there's a perfect medium, I guess.
Yeah. As I was gonna say, is it can be. I know that, like, we go back to the drawing board a lot because we overcompensate for one or the other, like whether there's too many cameras, trail cameras deployed, because we're really wanting to, see things, and we might inadvertently be intimidating things from using, aggressive scientific approaches, or we're like having too much fun. Like a good example is, like, we've been doing like laser light shows up in Bluff Creek with like this little portable system that we've established. And while that's cool and we're introducing a lot of sounds and sights, like I recently was reflecting on that, like, and I said, well, maybe that's too much. Maybe we're overstimulating them because we're introducing new unknown technology that may be, destructive from their perspective. And then they're just sitting on the hillside. Like, how did they cast a 30-foot laser lady dancing to the, to a song, like it looks like witchcraft, and it's like, so I kind of wonder if, like, maybe that's too much, and like with certain survival strategies of animals, like curiosity and better understanding potential threats is something that might lean them a little bit closer to the scene. But then there's some animals, and Bigfoot might be one of them, that it's just like, it's unfamiliar and I don't have to be around it, so see ya. And then what we experience a lot of the time after doing these huge displays to capture curiosity is total silence, in contrast. So so it is like, it's trying to establish something that works, and that's where data collection comes in handy, because it's like, well, we've done this and 3 out of 10 times we've gotten results, so maybe keep doing it, or we do this and we've been doing it for 3 years and haven't had anything happen at all. So, like, maybe we should retire it until until we've tried some other techniques and tested some different strategies.
Sure. And what's awesome about what you're doing, and if people ask too, like, what is one thing of tech or one thing you would bring when Bigfooting? If you're serious about research, not just having a genuine experience, if you're serious, bring a journal. Journal that. Whether you're speaking into your phone, get the detail immediately, because even a day later, you will begin to slip. You will begin to add. It's amazing what the human mind does. So I love that you say that. I believe Nikki and Em would back that up as well. You know, a good journal and the discipline to detail every experience, no matter how thrilling or exciting it is paramount to proper research. What do you think, Tate?
I agree. Having a journal is really good. And you know what's cool about a journal is you can have it on your phone, and there's another tool you can have on there without having to carry something else extra. Is you can get a 3D scanner if your phone allows it. So you can, if you see anything weird like a tree, you can actually 3D scan whatever you're seeing. You know, you could do a video or a picture, but I think a 3D scan allows for a lot more detail. And then you write it down in the journal.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, give an example of like techniques too. I want to talk about that as well. It's I saw Jonathan in the chat posted about it. So like, the normal camping thing to do is like if you have a guitar, somebody plays that around the campfire. I feel like a lot of people who go out Bigfooting will do that. So I don't want to do the typical guitar around the campfire thing. I want to bring a projector and a screen and watch a movie in camp or play video games and do that, because Bigfoot has not seen people do that. And then playing music in the woods, I want to take it to the extreme. So I brought my bass and bass amp and was playing music and got a wood response or wood knock like a few minutes later. So I like trying different things out or taking it to the extreme of some particular research method.
And I would love, like, in this field, for those of you that aren't seasoned and hardened by, the intense personalities of our space, until somebody really, even if somebody proves that a certain technique works, that does not mean that other techniques may not work as well. For those of us that go out a bunch, most of the time nothing happens. It's like ghost hunting, it's like UFO hunting. It really doesn't. So you need to go out and try new things and have fun with it. And then if it does work, it's just like fishing. If a lure works, then you try it everywhere and you try to see where the patterns are. And I believe what we're all doing, it's a longitudinal study. Don't think you're going to knock it out of the park day one. You're not. So be in for the long haul. And then once you gather your evidence and you find out something that works, the hardest thing that you're going to have to deal with is, do you share? That's it. Do you share? But yeah, you guys are awesome, man. I love it. I love that you found each other. How did you guys become best buds? What was it, a Craigslist ad? What's going on?
It started in Six Rivers. So I mean, just my history in the Bigfoot field is kind of like I'm a big road tripper, but a solo investigator, and I was like kind of in the middle of Tennessee, a little too close to Nashville, and I felt compelled to venture outward, and so I mean, instead of like trying my luck over and over again without much happening in like the Smokies, and there's still potential in like Appalachia and even like in Tennessee and the Carolinas and stuff. I just went out to California, like as like a kid straight out of high school, like just flew out to California, and didn't know exactly what I was doing in terms of good field practices, but got out there and had some like cool experiences, not necessarily squatchy, but a little bit of squatchy, like hearing some wood knocks up there in Six Rivers. And it took me like 10 years, or I think 8 years to get back for the second trip. So it was in the fall of 2018. I finally was able to drive a vehicle back there and get to Louse Camp. And this was after going through Willow Creek, and I had just gotten off the year. It was a few years before I had thru hiked the Appalachian Trail. So like I got out there to try and do a lesser known long distance hiking trail called the Bigfoot Trail. And the Bigfoot Trail was like rough. Like, it's still very much in development, and that whole, like, whether anywhere in the Klamath Mountains is like very rugged, and like the section of trails, they're ravaged by wildfires, or just like low maintenance. And so, I mean, I kind of like was reworking the plan from being a through hike on a 500-mile trail to like just a more thorough Bigfoot investigation. And I met Steven Struford in the Bigfoot books down there in Willow Creek, and he was like, "Hey, well, the Bluff Creek Project and some additional researchers are out there doing some investigations right now. And if you go to Louse Camp, here's how to get there. You'll run into some."
Wow.
So I come in at like 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night, unannounced, and and I pull up there with my dog Bandit, and but Tate was in company there, and I introduced myself and kind of gave my backstory a little bit, and within a matter of like minutes of just having a conversation, I was around the fire, eating some good food, and making some friends up there in Northern California, and so that kind of began. But I don't know, Tate, would you add anything else? I mean, there's a lot of adventures and misadventures and awkward moments in between then and now.
My first initial thoughts of him was like, this guy's kind of a jerk, kind of just stumbling in on our camp, and we're all like trying to enjoy it. So. But yeah, through that hardened shell of a man, I found a tender gummy bear of a person.
Yeah. I think you and I remember that differently.
Hey, but Ron, let me commend you, right? In the spirit of the Patterson Gimlin film, in the spirit of two men that, regardless of how you feel about them, they were badasses. They were worthy. You were traveling solo that time at night. You wanted it. You were willing to risk life or death for it, and you strolled into camp like Roger or Bob, in my opinion. So I like whatever they thought, they were definitely like, wow, mad respect for this crazy guy, because that takes BALLZ, okay, big time. And Tate, you have that too. You have this thing about you that's fearless in a way that I think is paramount to research. You almost got to be a little wild to do it. And you two, it seems like you share that.
I love it. Thank you, my man.
Yeah, of course. I'm not hooking up with you, but I think you guys are awesome.
Oh, okay. Still?
Yeah. No, it's great, but it's a beginning, right? Like, once again, let's go back to what Nikki was saying. Bigfoot brings us together. Somehow it brings us together. And if you want it bad enough, you're going to have to deal with a lot of haters. You're going to have to deal with a lot of people telling you techniques aren't right. This isn't right. But they don't know. And honestly, don't hate people. You want to know one of the greatest things you can do about going viral online? Don't hate the haters. They're part of the process. Love them. They will help you launch.
I've learned that before. Yeah.
Yeah. No, love the haters. Love them. They're part of your tribe, whether they like it or not. You like it, whether they like it or not. Okay. But
I think strong responses to those challenging moments, and those harsh criticisms, like, they really help build your ability to give yourself a stronger position and make a stronger argument for your case.
100%.
It's great practice. That's how I look at a lot of those criticisms, is like, okay, well, how do I navigate this, and what kind of biases are in place, and how can I kind of derail those personal biases to like facilitate better understanding.
Yep. And how bad do you want it, right? Because if people can knock you off the scent that we are all on when it comes to Bigfoot, then did you really want it that bad? And you got to knock a few apples off that tree. And that's why, Tate, these researchers you brought on are phenomenal. So yeah, they're getting there. They are literally chipping away at it, because like I said, it's a longitudinal process, and that is the only way to approach it. And it was also the only way to see who's really down with Bigfoot.
100%.
Yeah. Anyway, is there anything else you guys want to talk about before we slip into Ron, and Ron educates us on how to be, a true Bob or a true Roger?
I'm good, Ron.
You good? Okay.
Yep.
Ron, take it away.
All right. So as Tate kind of pulls up the video there, and we'll start cueing that, I just want to give a little extra context. So this is kind of like an adapted presentation from what I did 2-3 weeks ago at a nature center in northern Illinois. I was doing a presentation on Bigfoot and critical thinking. So if I don't know if this is active video, but Tate, if you want to pause here, this is a lot to read through. Is one of the things that I think is important for thinking critically in the subject of Bigfoot is to kind of fall in compliance with the scientific method. And so like there's that, you've seen spreads like this, and you know I've kind of provided some context here. But like, you know, the scientific method, just real quick, is making an observation, forming a question, and starting your research and forming like a hypothesis, right? An educated idea on something, and then experimenting with that idea to see if it holds weight in established science or if it doesn't. And then going from that experimentation, you're collecting the data. And then after that data collection, you're doing an analysis of that data, you're reviewing it with peers, and then you're ultimately drawing conclusions based off of your findings. But this model I have trouble with, because you kind of hit a dead end, and you'll see like within the Bigfoot context, like what I mean by that. So our observation in this scenario is people report Bigfoot sightings, footprints, and other behaviors associating them with Bigfoot. Why is that happening? And so then, you know, as we research the subject, what are the popular theories and reports of Bigfoot? Moving on to a hypothesis, this is my personal hypothesis, is that, you know, I support the idea that Bigfoot is an unknown species of primate. And then my experimentation is investigating it in the field and trying to follow up on reports to try and make a discovery. With data collection, I'm recording wildlife data, assessing habitat, deploying camera and audio equipment. So in addition to just trying to get evidence of Bigfoot, there's this other aspect of just understanding the environment that Bigfoot would undoubtedly have to live within. That is, you know, habitat that has to be supportive of an organism like Bigfoot, especially if you go back to my hypothesis saying that it's an unknown species of primate, a biological animal, and not a supernatural entity. So if we're looking at that, then you know, there's certain things that I'm looking for, like, hey, I need water sources, I need food sources. And, you know, based off of our understanding from eyewitness reports and long-term data collection is, you know, Bigfoot's an opportunistic omnivore, similar to a bear, where it would be eating vegetation, berries, but also like is probably taking advantage of meat sources, animals, rodents, insects, various things like fish or amphibians from streams and stuff like that. So all of those things have to be present in the habitat to convince me. And if those things are absent, then I'm kind of skeptical of any activity that might be happening there, or at least it's prompting me to ask more questions as to how something could live there, and might be something that I'm missing. But like, okay, so collecting data, and your next step would be, you know, the analysis part. So yeah, I find a lot of hairs out there, so I look at stuff under microscopes. Now I'm starting to build a little personal lab in my study now, where I can do things like that. I'm comparing audio to known species. There's a bunch of like animal vocalizations. You can start on YouTube and find a lot of different animal sounds from wherever you're researching. But like in this field, it's important to like cross-reference birds like cranes and owls, and their potential vocalizations. So if there's, you know, you want to make sure that you're not hearing a sandhill crane or a whooping crane or a barred owl or a flagellated owl. And so like looking up vocalizations of those animals and cross-referencing them, while also like asking people in the field that might feel like obligated for, you know, to participate, or not feel obligated, but would be willing to weigh in on it. That's something that like I really felt fortunate for having, is getting a second opinion and seeing what others have to say. But then you'll see here at the conclusion, like let's say I go out and I collect some hairs and some strange vocalizations on audio. I get to this point where it's like, well, can the proof be refuted, and does Bigfoot exist? Well, if it's not absolute proof, you're kind of forced to kind of end your investigation there. With this model of the scientific method, you hit this like brick wall of, well, I didn't produce a body, so what did we do? You know, where are we? You know, was it a success? Was it a failure? So this model doesn't work for me as applying it to Bigfoot. Tate, if you want to go ahead and hit play again, we'll get the other model up. It's a little bit more complex, but for all the right reasons. All right. So let's take a look at this one. This one has a lot of the same steps, but it's a little bit different. You still got your ask a question, research your topic. Let me go full screen here because it's a bit small. You're making a hypothesis, but you'll see these offshoots, right? So when you're testing your hypothesis, it's saying, is the experiment working? And you have a split, like, is it yes or no? Is the experiment working? And if not, then you can try to fix the experiment or procedure. This kind of makes me think of like, well, when we go out there and we try wood knocks, we might elicit a response. And we've done that several times. And, that's something that is worth repeating. But with our laser shows, maybe we're scaring away Bigfoot. So maybe it's time to retire that particular practice as part of our research, at least within a specific area like Bluff Creek, which it doesn't seem to be producing any results. So maybe we should find something that's less aggressive or start interpreting why the laser shows produce quiet, squatchless nights. And going from there, like you can test the hypothesis after you improve it, you audit it a little bit and find a better system in place to kind of conduct your research. If it says yes, then you're going down and you're analyzing that data again. And then I think it's kind of small, but results align with the hypothesis or they do not align with the hypothesis. If they don't align with the hypothesis, it's okay. The experiment can be used as research for future projects, and you can ask new questions, form new hypothesis. And I think that's important to have that opportunity when you're dealing with this ongoing field where it's a fringe science. I don't like the word pseudoscience because I think there's real science applications in the subject of Bigfoot. And it aligns well with established wildlife biology, in my opinion. So like as a fringe science, like we're still dealing with extremely limited data pools of understanding what Bigfoot is. So as we kind of navigate that, like we should be learning that some ideas don't align with what the phenomenon actually is. So we might come to a conclusion that, okay, well, maybe if it's not exhibiting these exact human behaviors when I thought it was a hominid, then maybe I need to go back and revisit it as more of a non-human ape. Or the other way around, it's like, well, maybe it's behaving less like a gorilla or a chimp and more like, what people depict an early man to behave like. And so like, you want to be able to give yourself leeway as you discover more about something that most people don't know anything about. So, like, again, like both of these like offshoots are there when you have those problem areas. And so instead of having a conclusion at the bottom too, this model helps us, like, it just says communicate the results. And ultimately this scientific method model is basically just saying, like, be responsible with your data collection, but add it to the body of overall data for a more comprehensive understanding. And I think this is better for like collaborative efforts, which is like what we're all engaging with right now. We're dealing with limited support and limited data, and when we band together and we are responsible and honest, like, then the overall picture can be very clear. But that being said, you have to be able to think critically and avoid some of those pitfalls of unreliable data, hoaxes, and dishonest takes on the subject. But yeah, over here, the scientific approach, like just some examples here, is a lot of it is like, what are the popular explanations? A lot of these are still the same thing that I put. But yeah, just the last bit here, I just wanted to put emphasis on the communicating the results portion is absolute proof for the species is unlikely, but we can learn more about local wildlife, climate, and ask new questions about whether Bigfoot fits within the ecosystem or not. And if so, then how? And then we adapt new approaches from new understandings. All right, we can move on past that one. That's a lot of talking between those two slides. Cultural presence. So here's some places. I've been up to Canada for a couple of trips now. This past summer in July, I went to Ontario, and then back in 2018, right after meeting Tate for the first time, I was up in the Vancouver area. and went up into British Columbia. And this is actually the first picture here in the top left is at Stanley Park in Vancouver. And that's that figure on the bottom of that center pole. A lot of people might identify that as Zunaqua. That's the wild woman of the woods. And that's an example of Bigfoot in traditional culture and indigenous culture of the area. The Kawak people use Zunaqua in a lot of their cultural practices and their potlatches. There's depictions. There's Zunaqua in their dances and stuff. And I think that ancient acknowledgement of this entity, like it exhibits a presence that goes beyond modern day hoaxing, and it speaks of the longevity of concepts of wild men and wild women in Bigfoot like creatures within the North American continent. So I think that predates the first Bigfoot hoax. And I think that a lot of commentaries that say, oh, Bigfoot was made up in the 50s by a bunch of drunk loggers, it doesn't hold up when you're talking about representations and totem poles that are like hundreds of years and possibly like further back, like, but a lot of these artifacts don't really make it into the modern age. But the traditional practices are an extension of those ancient acknowledgments, as they have various recreations, but within specific cultural contexts that, to me, when you see these depictions, it's noteworthy. And then you can see here on the right side, this is Ontario, Canada. I was just outside of a national park there this year, and there's a figure on the right of that sign that has a sagittal crest, a domed head. It's depicted as more of like a spirit being or an abstract creature from like this art, but there's eagles and beaver and fish within the scene as well. And I don't know exactly what that figure is, but to me it fits the proportions of something like Bigfoot. So this is from the Anishinaabe or the Ojibwe people of that area just north of Lake Superior. And I think it's telling that you can find like an acknowledgement of Bigfoot to these indigenous cultures, that it's something that they don't think is just a silly white man's joke, it has some cultural importance, and it goes back through time. And then the other cultural presence that I wanted to kind of touch base on is just name places like Skookum Meadows or Sasquatch Provincial Park down there in the bottom left corner. When names are attached, specific names that say the Mountain Devil or something like that, it acknowledges that there have been occurrences in the past that are potentially Bigfoot related, and that might help you hone in on an area that you might want to research. So if there's sightings in an area and you're somewhere in Colorado and we don't know why the creek that runs through that area is called Monkey Creek, you might want to go there and camp out and see if you can find out why. I think that there's significance in power behind names and of places, and what they're associated with. And I think that by taking a closer look at surrounding areas and what names are, like, I think that you can use a critical thinking to kind of hone in on what might be a good research area if there's not a convenient clustering of reports on your favorite database. Whew. All right, you can go to the next part. So this is an example of Tate's projector. What we like to do out here, I had a projector that I brought with me, and we were watching some Bigfoot programming, and I just wanted to include an image of Patty somewhere in this presentation. But in the other presentation at the Nature Center, we talked a lot about the film. But I know that I think other people are going to be doing a better job of that today. But that's an example of just us thinking outside the box and trying to use imagery as a form of curiosity to bring something down into our camp. And we've watched all kinds of things on this projector, trying different things and seeing if it'll elicit a response later. I don't know. I'm not as opposed as I am to the laser theory. But I don't know. I don't know if we've had success with the projector yet. It's always kind of difficult to tell because we might hear a wood knock like hours later, but was it because we were watching Survivor Man Bigfoot, or was it just totally unrelated? Were they just there on their own? That's we can go to the next part there, Tate. I think that we have already talked about footprints. Emily did a good job of talking about footprints. The other image here that wasn't included was we found a trackway up there along the Go Road a couple of years ago. And I just wanted to weigh in on footprints and their anatomical structure. When we think critically, this is an important part of the data that Bigfoot researchers are looking to collect, the anatomical specificity of a footprint, the mid-tarsal break, the midfoot flexibility, the flexation of toes. That shatters the argument that these were wooden stompers and each foot is dynamic. But beyond that, when there is a trackway, there is the same foot exhibiting different shapes and flexes. So I think that is important to acknowledge. And while still skeptics claim that it can be hoaxed, it's a lot of effort for somebody who might not be fully recognized for it. So, the idea that somebody's going to make a very complex, flexible foot and make it wearable as a shoe and make two of them and then walk weird out in mountainous terrain off the beaten path to be seen like that's an argument that I don't find very strong. I don't think that it's impossible, but I also think that there's so much context there as to why that wouldn't be valid, why normal minds don't think that way. It's easier for me to dismiss than an animal was walking along this game trail and left some tracks behind. And I think that's what we could be finding with a lot of these footprint and trackway finds. Next slide. Hair analysis is important. Spending a lot of money on DNA analysis is something I don't have money for. So just physical hair analysis is kind of important. If you want to flip over to the next slide, Tate, we'll take a look at some examples of alleged Bigfoot hair. So a little bit about Bigfoot hair. There is a couple of physical characteristics when looking under a microscope that people are looking for. These images on the right show that there is a lack of a medulla. A medulla is a buildup of, I believe, proteins within the center of the hair, and it looks like a dark brown or a black line that cuts through the middle of the hair shaft. And with like bear hairs, you'll find partial or intact, like consistent medulla structuring. So, we've looked at different animals. I've collected probably, I think it's over 10 or 11 different trees in the Bluff Creek area on one trip. I collected hairs from different ones, and most of those hairs ended up being bear because the bears are interacting with these trees as a territorial display or something similar like that, or opportunity to like chew up the tree and then rub on it to leave their scent. But from some of those areas, we've realized as researchers that once the tree has been damaged, then it produces a sticky resin. And along game trails, all animals that traverse and rub up against these trees have the likelihood of leaving their hairs. So just because a bear was the first to damage this tree and leave hairs behind, it doesn't mean that that is the only type of hair that you'll find. And I found moose hairs along trails. I found bear. I found what seems to be like we've looked at medulla structures and compared it to books on hair analysis. And it looks to be like something related to like the weasel family or something like that. And then we've had hairs that look like this. We've gotten 2 hairs from our research in the Pacific Northwest. We collected one from Laird Meadow in the Bluff Creek area, and that's what this hair is. These images are all from the same hair. And then this year I was looking at a hair we collected last year in the Mount Hood area, and it has these same physical qualities. The second quality that I haven't touched base on yet is the blunt, non-tapered end of the hair. You can see this right here. If I were to pull my hair off from my head right now, in fact, if I were to pull 2 hairs, if I were to pull a beard hair and I pull a head hair, the beard hair would be tapered at the end. It'd be pointed like a needle, and so would the head hair. But the beard hair is a coarser hair and it would have medulla, whereas my head hair from the top of my head wouldn't have a medulla at all. But still, the head hair from a human is most likely going to have a tapered end, and alleged Bigfoot hairs don't exhibit that quality. So it's difficult with hair analysis, because just by demonstrating that my beard hair is unique under the microscope to the hair on the top of my head, it demonstrates that hairs form differently based off of their biological application on the same individual. So I'm still doing hair analysis, but like the more critically I think about it, it's interesting to note within the Bigfoot context, but it's not going to prove Bigfoot exists like anytime soon. I think that a lot more money has to be spent on hair and tissue analysis from a DNA analysis rather than just a physical like this. All right, next slide. Audio. Guys, I got some clips today that are interesting. We can get right into it. I will say this before we get into the clips. I always bring an audio recorder. You're more likely to hear a wood knock or a vocalization than straight up see a Bigfoot. So if anybody's saying to themselves, I want to get into Bigfoot research, what should I get? Don't get an audio recorder. You can get a high-end recorder that records in WAV format, a lot of high detail. You can spend $100, $125 and then go out there and start collecting like moderately, convincing evidence, that's hard to refute. I would get an audio recorder before you'd get a high-end camera or an expensive thermal unit, because the visual contact between you and a subject like Bigfoot is way less likely than being over a hill communicating to their buddy from like half a mile away and still being able to hear them from where you are. Like, so definitely get an audio recorder. The other thing I will touch base on is we're talking about AI and the dangers of it. One thing that I did kind of on accident this year, but was totally the right set of actions to take, was I deployed multiple audio units. And then when I had a suspect vocalization appear around the circumference of my camp, I captured it from multiple angles with two different audio recorders and segments of that with a camera as I was documenting it. So with audio, like we're talking about generative AI and how that can lead to more misinformation, but by doubling down and capturing the same sequence but with different qualities of position, you can refute that the sounds that you are producing as evidence are not AI generated, because the repetition and consistency of two different recorders that are distinguishable, but ultimately, like, for them to still have the chain of command, like the chain of events happen in sequential order down to like the second, is it's invaluable. So like what I mean by that is, like, I had one positioned over here on one end of camp, and then I had this other one like closer to me recording simultaneously. And when these vocalizations started to occur, they both picked up the sounds, but one, like, the sounds were like more to the left or the right, and then the other one, it was like more dead on. So like, and that goes down to like there's squirrels in the background, there are birds in the background, and then there's me talking to myself and mumbling in the background, and it's clearer on one recorder, but it's a little bit more muffled on the other. But what that does is it kind of like like AI can't generate the same scene twice. So it's important to be able to make those distinctions. And it's, I think it's just a better way to kind of collect that data and have that validity. All right, we can get into the sounds now. Okay, so Melody Camp. This is a code name for an area within the Mount Hood area where in 2021, I recorded these sounds at like 4 a.m. I couldn't find my recorder, but when I initially pulled up to the camp, I heard a couple of isolated wood knocks up on the hill and started freaking out. And then I'm digging through trying to find my recorder. And a little bit later after that, there was something banging on like a metal oil drum, 50-gallon drum, just like discarded by the Forest Service, and the woods is all rusted and stuff. But something was like banging on that off in the woods as well. And so there was 2 different positions where I was hearing like knocking or percussive sounds. And I was like, well, I got to get something to work. And I had one recorder fail on me, and I couldn't find the other one. It was lost in my mess of a car. But I did have this Yeti mic that I have with me, and I hooked that up to my laptop, and I put the laptop on my dash and the mic on top of the car. And I said, well, hopefully whatever was out there will come back and I'll be able to record it. And that happened initially around 8:30 to 9 o'clock at night. It was just a little past dusk. It was getting dark. And at like 3:45, 4 a.m, something like that, I just woke up in the car and I started to hear something, and I couldn't quite hear it. But the windows were cracked, and I just said, well, whatever it is, let's record it. It sounds weird enough. And I got these vocalizations that that are kind of referred to as like sing-song vocalizations, because they have like a melodious quality to them. And that's why we kind of nicknamed this camp where I collected this audio Melody Camp, to kind of protect its privacy as a research area, while also kind of like noting that that there's something out there singing from time to time. And I don't really know what those implications are. I don't know if this is a courtship thing or just like if Bigfoot just likes singing. But we do think that these are Bigfoot vocalizations. And this, incidentally, the hair that I analyzed from the Mount Hood area, that the hair I collected last year came from Melody Camp. So we now have like a couple of instances of wood knocks. These vocalizations very similar to the ones I recorded from within 2 miles of that area 2 years before, I believe. And we have just some other things happen in our camp, like we have a gifting station where stuff was taken without like clear sign that it was another known animal. So Melody Camp is starting to be like a hot spot for us to go and do our research, and both Tate and myself have spent some time there. Tate, if you want to go ahead and play that audio, we'll see how it sounds. Oh, and this is Tate, if you want to pause that one real quick. So yeah, I did do some editing on that just to make the audio a little bit more easier to process for the ear. But ultimately I just put a high pass and a low pass filter around the vocalizations to kind of filter out like this white noise and like cricket chirping. But I didn't really do anything besides that. I amped it up a little bit after that, but I didn't do any like speed alteration or anything like that. And that's when we do Bigfoot analysis or alleged, like audio analysis, and we want to get a better ear for the sounds that we record. That's kind of like the extent of it. Is we'll crop out the interesting parts. We'll put a high pass filter or a low pass filter, which those are just filters that take out those high and low frequencies that are outside your target sound so that you can hear the target sound a little more clearly. And then after you do that, then you amplify the sound so that you can hear it a little bit better. So that's just a little bit of the process of audio analysis that I think goes hand in hand with thinking critically and looking at your sample sets and forming your own conclusions. But this right here is the other audio clip. I got this back in July in Ontario. And going back to the critical thinking, I don't know if we have a slide in there, but like thinking critically about doing research in Ontario for the first time. It was a new research area that I had never been to, and I spent about 2.5 weeks kind of putting together a hypothesis on it. But there were some convincing eyewitness testimonies of a creature and footprints being found by a burn crew in a specific area in Canada. And I said, well, this was 30 years ago, but they happened within like 6 months of each other of the same year. And the parties aren't related. And they both reported to this database. And I said, well, this is convincing to me. Like, this seems like an individual within that area, like wandered, like naturally, like an animal would. And I think that the other thing that made this like a place that I wanted to research was this was 30 years ago, but there was no like urban development in the area. And I saw like available water sources from the map. Looking at Google Maps, I was able to say, well, habitat seems intact and sources were reliable. And I think that that Ontario presents like an intact, like, and consistent habitat to support a population of Bigfoot, to the point of potentially explaining some of the sightings that you see on the eastern and western edges of the Great Lakes, as you start to see Bigfoot activity in Minnesota and northern Wisconsin on the western side of Lake Michigan. And then you start to see Lake Superior and Lake Michigan. And then like the Adirondacks and the Poconos of Pennsylvania and New York, there's a lot of Bigfoot activity reported out there. And I think that maybe Bigfoot's population in Ontario could have been robust enough to allow for species dispersion into those new areas down in the lower 48. So that was kind of my working hypothesis. And then I was like, well, let me go to an area in Canada where the sightings are believable and the habitat is intact, and maybe I'll have some stuff happen. And just the additional context to help people understand why the audio recorders were deployed in this area specific was I started to find tree breaks along this old logging road, and they seemed very unconventional. They seemed like there was a standing tree in some instances, and then there was a tree leaning into its notch, which you expect from like snowfall, like, breaking trees and stuff like that over the winter, or wind and storms and stuff like that. But what was unique was like they seemed forced in place where there was abrasions on both the supporting tree and the tree that was placed in it. Like something, not only did they fall into place, but they were like mashed into place repeatedly, and the bark was like stripped from both the leaning tree and the standing tree. And I found multiple instances in that area where it was like forced manipulation of like trees in specific positions. And one of those trees was like inverted from its like root ball. I think it fell naturally, but there was like this 2 to 3 year old tree where its root structure had like rotted away and it had fallen. But then that root structure was like inverted up, leaning against another tree very steeply. So like this tree that was clearly on the ground at one point was like positioned like in an unnatural position. And it had a lot of those abrasions as well that kind of suggested like something could have happened. And then there was other stuff. There's other examples. I'm kind of skeptical of structures, but when I go and analyze a structure that could be Bigfoot or human manipulation, I do look for conditions like, okay, this big giant limb and all around me, the closest tree is 50 feet away or 30 feet away. And it's like a little guy. So it didn't drop this massive limb. This was brought from somewhere else, you know, and there are examples where you'll find that. So anyway, I saw some strange structures, and less than a mile up the road is kind of where I found a little spot to pull aside. And throughout this whole area, both where I camped and the area where I found these structures, there were like wild blueberries in abundance. So the habitat seemed good. There were marshy areas. It was like a cross habitat of where there's different habitats started and new ones began. And like they overlapped, and there were a abundance of different resources, even like semi-aquatic plants that I think would sustain something like a primate, like horsetail, and different things like that. So just out there as like a environmental guy, I'm looking and assessing the habitat and doing what I do and what I've had training to do. And I said, yeah, a lot of this is like very cohesive with what I would consider Bigfoot habitat and a area worth research. So then the mics went out, and this was captured on a unit called the SM4 by Wildlife Acoustics. This is like a field biologist grade recorder, and it was just outside of my camp. I put a blind over it and never went into the blind myself. But then after doing wood knocks, after a few minutes, I would say like no more than half an hour. I mean, I think it was like way less than that. I think it was like 5 to 10 minutes. These vocalizations started to play out through at the corner of my camp, and it was like shocking to me. I was solo, and I didn't even have my dog with me or anything like that. So it was like, as a solo investigator, to hear these sounds like approaching you is a little bit alarming. And so there's portions throughout the audio where I'm like talking to myself and like trying to like comfort myself, because I want to record more data. I want to see what's out there, but it was definitely like a shock. But Tate, if you want to go ahead and play this is the sand pit audio. The sand pit got its name because there's a big sandy pit out there. I don't know what to tell you. It was a kind of a sloppy nickname. And Tate, if you want to just play this to the point where I say, hey, and then there's that one initial response, I think that's a good spot to kind of pause it. And this is just me mumbling and talking to myself, like what I was saying, so that's...
Hey.
All right. So a couple of things to note about this, and just this is like a huge part of like the analysis and thinking critically, and what I wanted to talk to about today was having a conversation with other people, you know, like reaching out to members in the field that have experience looking at an audio analysis and alleged Bigfoot vocalizations. First of all, I tried to contact a primatologist in Canada, and still have not gotten a response. Not everybody was as willing as Jeff Meldrum in the Bigfoot community, or in the scientific community, to speak on Bigfoot. And for good reason. I mean, there's a lot of them there, their careers are at stake and stuff. So I understand if they don't want participation in that. But I did reach out to Chris Spencer and also with Cliff Barrickman, and both of those individuals have been in agreement with the idea that these are pant hoot displays, which is a territorial or like a greeting display for chimpanzees. And what's interesting about these audio recordings is there's also the percussive sounds, which is also accompanied in chimps when they do these displays. They'll get at the root of a tree, at the base of a tree, and they'll either strike their hand or kick their feet, and make like a percussive sound to accompany their vocals. There's also a lot of bird sounds going on in here. You'll hear the squawk and the territorial wing display of a nighthawk. which is out there, which I had never really heard a nighthawk clearly. And then I heard it several times throughout the course of this 1 hour recording. And so having to learn what a nighthawk was and learning that that was not part of the suspected Bigfoot vocalizations was a little bit of a learning curve that I had to adapt to. But still, what can't be refuted is these like pant hoot sounds. I'm still looking for another explanation of something that you would expect to find in the Ontario woods, and I haven't found anything yet. So it's just there's just that extreme primate quality. And if you guys can't hear it, there's you can find the video on my YouTube. I'm gonna do more of a comprehensive thing on this later, but like there's it definitely helps if there's headphones with volume up, but I don't know. It's weird. That was probably the most active part of it. There's a couple of other isolated whoops and stuff in there after, but this was just something that came up, and within like a few minutes, it was just a lot going on, a lot to process, and it was really exciting. And I'm glad that I have that experience. But yeah, I think we can go to the next part of it, Tate. I don't know what's next at this point. I think I'm pretty close to being done. Or no, I mean like the next part of I don't know if that is the last bit of the video or. I think so, right? That's the last bit. Is the 2 audio clips.
Yeah, there's that just a little bit. There's a couple slides at the end, I think.
Okay. Yeah, we can go to the slides. I got a cat here. Hold on, let me get it. Oh yeah, so this is like some of the habitat. You can see that if you pause that there, Tate, you got, I don't know if those are edible mushrooms or what they are, but we have something like a blackberry or a raspberry, blueberries, and then this plant over here on the left-hand side, I think, is horsetail, and that's an edible food source for a lot of animals as well. So these are like things that Bigfoot could be taking advantage of as potential food sources out in this area. But also, I will say that there was a lot of sign of black bear and moose in that vicinity. And specifically, like I will say that the moose trail is about 7 feet tall clearance and about like 3 to 4 feet wide at a lot of portions. So that creates like a good sized game trail for something like Bigfoot to travel along, in addition to the roads in that area. But we always talk about like decommissioned roads in the Forest Service areas and how those could be good highways for animals to travel, including Bigfoot. So that's where we would spend a lot of time looking for tracks. And you can go to, I don't know what's after this. There might be more slides, Tate. There's an active beaver dam in the area, but that's a kind of forest. Like, looks like there might have been some former logging out there, but there were still portions of old growth, which I think is important for habitat quality. And those are some of those structures where, like, you can see, like, how would this one in the center fall? These are the same picture of it's different pictures of the same structure, but how does that fall at specifically like the right time to be in alignment like that? Like, that one forked branch would have had to fall at the same time and interlock with this other big branch. But then, like, I looked around and these were like apart from any sizable trees that they could have like that. It didn't seem like they fell where they were, and I don't really know how that could have happened like extremely effectively. Like both of those smaller leaning branches are supporting each other and would have had to fall at the same time to like fall. Like, I don't know. It's weird because if they fell out, if one fell first and the other one fell second, then they wouldn't be interlocked. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I think it's odd, but that got me looking around the area and found a lot of these others. I think there might be more examples of like the abrasions in the next slide. Nope. Okay. So that was just the old slide that I had for the audio. But the other component of this was utilizing citizen science. This is the last thing that I had at the Nature Center's presentation. is while you're out there collecting your data towards Bigfoot research, it's cool if you can contribute to field sciences. So there's these apps like iNaturalist and eBird where you can make your contributions through that. Like you make a discovery. Like I reported this great gray owl sighting, and there's no great gray owl sightings on the north side of this lake where I was doing my research around. So like I feel like I made that contribution towards like the ornithology community by like acknowledging that those animals have that range. And then bat counts and identification. We went out and did a presentation with this thing called an echo meter, where it picks up frequencies of bat vocalizations and identifies them. And then you can record that there's a presence of the little brown bat in this area or a different species that might be present. And then the fourth point there, this is the last thing that we'll talk about, is the reporting rare wildlife species and locations to your local biologists and Fish and Game, which is something that the Bluff Creek Project has done when they caught trail cameras of the Humboldt martin in the Bluff Creek area. And it was thought to be regionally extinct from there. And its only residing range was like somewhere in the redwoods on the coast. But they found photographic evidence that the Humboldt martin's still there. And then since then, we've gotten a roadside dash cam video while doing investigations up there. I had a sighting of two individuals, the one that we caught on the road. And then when I got out to try and film it, I saw a second one. And then the following year, we deployed a trail camera for a whole year. It was a cell camera, and it captured a Humboldt martin on that trail camera. So, and then we have told wildlife officials about the initial trail camera photos and the dash cam video. So it's cool if you can contribute to conservation efforts, especially if you're out there experiencing very unique, very rare occurrences, like seeing an animal that many people think are not living out there. So if you're out and off the beaten path for a better chance of trying to find evidence of Bigfoot, you can also do more of a positive thing by recording these animal encounters and letting officials know. But that's all I got. I think that's about it. So thank you for letting me chat about it. Hope it didn't go too long.
Ron, that's about it. Wow. I mean, how else do you describe it? That is a wealth of information. I love how you started off with just talking about, totem poles and seeing these things in Native American history. In our culture, we dismiss the wisdom of the very people that have been here the longest. Why are they putting them on the totem poles? Why'd they put dragons in the zodiac? They just decided, let's throw one fake one in just for fun, just to mess with people down the line. If we would open our minds to the fact that we don't know everything, right? Which is what the basis for curiosity, because you can't be curious if you know everything. So you got to keep your curiosity. And Ron, I think you exemplify that greatly. On top of that, the recordings are fantastic. That's amazing. The Sand Pit and Melody Camp. I love Melody Camp. Something that I've been doing now when I take people out is, we're never going to have this robust harmonics that and a creature of that size that can create, right? Especially if they're using infrasound, low frequency sound to communicate over these heavily wooded distances, which makes sense because if you know anything about that, the way the waves are, they would travel. So anyway, you hit upon you hit on something else too that was amazing. Hold on, what was the note that I took? Thank you for teaching about the head hair and the beard, right? Like another thing is, people don't, it's almost like you want to think you know everything and everyone wants to know everything, but we don't. Nobody has enough time. Honestly, if we could do this in school, it'd be amazing. And there would be more of us with more time, but we don't. So thank you for teaching me the difference between the hair and the beard, how this can have the medulla and this is tapered. I didn't know that. I'm a weirdo geek that stays up too late looking at this stuff, and I didn't know that. So thank you for your wisdom, man. And I think great things are coming out of your camp with Tate. So to whatever comes in the future in your filmmaking, I think we're all going to be rewarded heavily for your research. But anyway, with that said, what else can we talk about, right? I mean, we got another legend coming up soon. I got a few things to say about this guy. First of all, in terms of published authors, right? Listen to this. The Squatch Detective's Guide to Bigfoot Investigations, Bigfoot, a Scientific Examination. What would Sasquatch do? The Sasquatch Playbook. It just keeps going on. How to be a better lover in the woods while looking for Bigfoot. I mean, is there any subject that this gentleman doesn't cover? And to be honest, if I'm going out in the woods and I don't want to be afraid, I'm bringing that guy with me. Look at that guy. Who's that guy? That's a Squatch Detective. So, you know, there are a lot of researchers in this. And what you've seen today is that it doesn't matter if you're a super well-known researcher or you're just grinding it out. We're all valuable in this journey to discover what Bigfoot is, right? Like, we really are. So make sure that you don't let anyone knock you off this horse that you're on, because you're on it for a reason. I'd like to believe that if you're really passionate about this, you're doing it for a reason, and we need you. So, you know, keep it going, keep it moving forward. And the Patterson Gimlin film, if that's the one thing, or at least today, that bonds us all and unites us, then amazing, man, amazing. Because if you just look and you accept that what they did is true, the journey, they had to really earn that. Dude, they were drinking cowboy coffee by the end. They were pissed off. You ever travel with someone for a long time, camp for days and weeks and really trying to do it, and then you're just getting on each other's nerves, you know? But right at the end of that annoyance, of that I can't go one step further, a lot of times that's where the breakthrough comes through. So anyway, so without further ado, so we can get on to Steve, the Squatch Detective calls. I just want to say it's going to be an honor to listen to this man speak. He has obviously has a great reputation, been around a lot, and I always go back to, who do you believe in the space? Find your people to go, okay, I think this person resonates with me, and then follow in their lead. They're going to lay a blueprint out for you, but then you have to take it from there. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the man, the myth, the ridiculously jacked, cool-looking dude that I wish I looked that cool, Mr. Steve, the Squatch Detective.
South Park PG, how are you?
Oh, I'm good, sir. I'm good. This is a great day. Sunday fun day with the Bigfoot crew. Why not, right?
Yeah, and I just blew my ears out because I had that cranked up to listen to those audios a little bit ago. And
Yeah.
But anyway, here I am. And I know everybody's asking for a Snapple, so...
No, get me a Snapple.
All right, so there we go. Yeah, we put it out there. But, yeah, today... I want to talk about debunking a debunking. A lot of people may not know, but I was an investigator, a private investigator for many years. I was a professional investigator, started in 1988. But my private investigation career started about 12 years after that. And one of the things when you look at one aspect of being a private investigator is looking at the criminality of the criminal side of things. And Tate, if you could pull my presentation up. There we go. Just looking at the criminality of things. And a lot of my jobs were, hey, listen, my son got picked up, and this is one of the first cases I ever took. My son got picked up for allegedly walking on somebody's car, so they got him for criminal mischief. And the kid was like 12 years old, 13 years old, whatever, and denies doing it. Parents, brought him to an attorney. Attorney brought him to me. And they wanted me to look at the investigation that was done. So one of the things as a PI you do is sometimes you look at the investigation and see if it got sidetracked, tunnel visioned, or had faults to it. And the kid's claim is the kids that did it walked past him as they walked this way. When the police came in, they saw those two kids and grabbed them. Now, the funny thing is that the police report says, yes, he was grabbed with one other individual. The witness statement said that there was 4 kids that did it. They arrested this kid on the basis that his shoe track looked similar to the ones on the car. And guess what was missing? Any of the evidentiary pictures. So you just had this guy's word that says, well, it looked like it versus that. I go interview the witness. The witness is like, I can't identify the kid. I wouldn't know who did it. So the charges, needless to say, were dropped. But that's what you look for in investigations. And what I want to talk about tonight, or this evening or this afternoon, is the Bob Hieronymus and Greg Long claims, the alleged making of Bigfoot. And one of the things we do is look at that investigation and see where it goes wrong. We're going to peel all those layers back. We're going to look at the characters involved. That includes Bob Hieronymus, Greg Long, Philip Morris, and a gentleman by the name of Cal K. Korff. Expose the inconsistencies and impossible timelines, and sometimes the outright fabrications that, one or two have made. This isn't about belief. It's about the evidence, logic, and integrity. This is not about even whether or not the Patterson Gimlin film is real, just the veracity of their claims, asking it if it's going, if they were the ones responsible for making it. So, I'll advance the slide here. So, in 2004, journalist Greg Long published The Making of Bigfoot, an inside story, claiming that the Patterson Gimlin hoax and the truth behind it was all a hoax. Long's primary witness was no relation to Tate, was Bob Hieronymus, a retired Yakima man who came forward more than 30 years after the footage was shot. He claimed that Roger Patterson paid him to wear a gorilla suit, march across Bluff Creek, and create the illusion of Bigfoot. Now, if that were true, it would be one of the most extraordinary hoaxes in history. But when we test Hieronymus's account against verifiable evidence, travel records, film processing documentation, biomechanics, and physical logic, it simply doesn't hold up, and I'm going to explain to you why. First off, we have the timeline problems. Hieronymus claimed the event took place days before the verified October 20, 1967 filming date. And the weather happens to match the date. October 20 matches the weather date for October 20. What you see in that film is what the weather was for that day. We know exactly when the film was processed. The Kodachrome lab had received it, I believe it was up in Seattle. It was viewed just a couple of days later. It was processed on October 22nd, flown down back to Patterson's scheduled return from Bluff Creek. That alone sinks Hieronymus's timeline. There was multiple witnesses to when this film was dropped off, when it was sent back. He also claimed to drive overnight from Yakima to Northern California, film a hoax, and then was back working the next morning. It's a 700-mile trip. And that's over mountain passes, completely implausible within the window he described. And when investigators spoke with people in Yakima, not a single one, not his employer, not his friends, not even his family, remembered him being gone that weekend. And there is no shreds of any corroboration. So this timeline just doesn't wobble, it collapses. So let's look at the costume claim. So Hieronymus described the suit as a horsehide or sometimes fur. He also said it had a particular odor to it as well, allegedly made by a friend of Patterson. But here's the issue. There was never any suit recovered. There was no piece of evidence to actually say, yes, this was the suit. And Hieronymus changed his timeline of the story, saying he never showed it to anybody, but then later he starts to recount he showed it in a bar full of people. And I can go on about what you see in the film versus a costume. And up on the slide you see is, some of the costumes of Planet of the Apes type of venue age at the time, which was the most one could do at that time in Hollywood. You can see skin deformation, a compliant gait, the feet roll naturally, the bare weight away a living body would. There's biological motion patterns, like Dr. Jeff Meldrum and Dr. Grover Krantz. And of course, even special effects expert Bill Munns have all confirmed that this was something unique and not a human gait. So let's take a look at height and proportion. So you see on the left hand side is your commonly passed around skeptic saying, look, this could be, this is Bob, this is Bob Hieronymus, look, wearing a suit. But when you adjust it on the right, Bob is a little bit smaller than what Patty is if you compress it down to the proper scaling. So I don't for 1 second believe that this was, Patty. I don't know exactly how tall Bob Gimlin is, but he is not about 6'8" to 7'2", which they claim Patty is. So if you look, even if he wore shoulder padding, the limb proportions don't match. His arms are too short for Patty's. His leg to torso ratio is too long. His stride is too human. To achieve the same proportions, he would need a custom-built extension and full prosthetic bodysuit, which simply did not exist outside of major studio work in the 1960s. And this is not a rural weekend project. So, enter Philip Morris. So, a few years later, Philip Morris, a costume manufacturer from North Carolina, claimed he had sold Patterson the gorilla suit. But again, his story introduces more contradictions than clarity. He never produced an invoice, a check stub, or any record of a sale to Roger Patterson. He said the suit was a standard off-the-shelf model made from Dynel synthetic fur with a rigid mask and zipper up the back. Now, when I look at this particular problem, was that Greg Long kind of marries the two stories here. Say Philip Morris was the provider of the costume and Bob Hieronymus was the guy who wore it. But they describe two entirely different suits. One that was made out of horsehide and stunk, and that was, I think, 4 or 5 pieces. And then you have Philip Morris, who says that it was, either 3 or 4 pieces, whatever. But the piece count was off on those suits. And they were made with Dynel and something that shouldn't have really stunk to high hack. So when you look at that, when you look at this, marrying two stories that don't match shows the bias the investigator, Greg Long, had on this. He was willing to overlook those differences and not explain them away or not try to deep dive. Maybe one of them is not telling the truth. Maybe none of them are telling the truth. Maybe one is telling a lie and perhaps the other one wanted to piggyback off it. See, the problem is obvious. The film subject's head, neck, and shoulders move independently, and there's no zipper line visible anywhere on the back. Here's where it gets worse. Morris claimed Patterson bought the suit directly from him, but Hieronymus claimed he got it from a friend of Patterson and later returned it to Roger's home. Morris, on the other hand, said he never got it back. So who's telling the truth here? And why would Morris get it back if he sold it? Didn't lease it or rent it. So who's telling the truth here? The answer appears to be neither. When Morris attempts to recreate the look on television or for documentaries, the result was a loose, rubbery costume that bore no resemblance to the creature in the film. Under identical lighting and film stock, the comparison was embarrassing. So he did reproduce this suit, and the suit consisted of Dynel synthetic fur. The construction method was a one-piece zip-back design, and the suit for TV was made roughly 6 feet in height, similar to Bob Hieronymus. The resulting demonstration, filmed outdoors, produced baggy folds at the knees and elbows, visible seams, and a shiny, uniform texture completely unlike the dense mat, hair, and anatomical contour seen in the Patterson Gimlin film. Under the same lighting and camera distance, the Morris suit lacked any visible musculature or subcutaneous movement. Yeah. So could that have suit existed in 1967? Well, available in 1967 was Dynel and other synthetic furs, one-piece latex and rubber masks, basic ape suits sold for stage or novelty use, and foam padding for shaping your contoured chests. But what were not available in 1967 was realistic skin stretch fur or multi-directional pile fabrics. They didn't exist until the 70s and 80s film industry. Seamless muscle suits, articulated masks with natural necks flexing out and no visible seam, soft jointed body suits that allowed natural gait and compliant foot roll. Even the best costume designers of that era, think Planet of the Apes, Space Odyssey, 2001: A Space Odyssey, used rigid prosthetic masks and segmented bodysuits, not continuous skin-tight anatomical forms. So let's take a look at one of the biggest claims that the critics will, or skeptics will use for the Bob Hieronymus story was the show Lie Detector. So in 2002, the Fox network aired Lie Detector, hosted by Rolando Watts. Hieronymus took a polygraph. I thought it was actually done by F. Lee Bailey, but I could be, that could be wrong. Hieronymus might be a little copy and paste here. Hieronymus took a polygraph test on camera and supposedly passed. The show presented it as final proof that he was telling the truth. But when you review the details, it's clear that what aired was entertainment, not science. Professional polygraph standards, as defined by the American Polygraph Association, require a distraction-free environment, strict pre-test interviews, and properly structured control questions, none of which was shown or happened. The test was conducted under hot stage lights, surrounded by cameras, crew, and an audience. The examiner, Edward Gelb, was introduced as a Dr. Gelb, yet his doctorate came from an unaccredited correspondence school. He had already been reprimanded for misrepresenting his credentials in other cases. The questions were simplistic: no baseline, no control, just yes or no, sound bites for TV editing. And to this day, no raw data, no charts, or no digital files have ever been released from the show for review. As a former FBI polygraph expert, Jack Triamarco, put it, that wasn't a polygraph, it was a performance. So when the show said he passed, what they really meant was he entertained. So let's look at Greg Long's tunnel vision. Greg Long, the author. His book, The Making of Bigfoot, reads like an investigation, but sounds more like a crusade. From the outset, Long made it clear that he believed the film was a hoax. Rather than test the hypotheses, he built his entire project to conform around it. That's a textbook case of confirmation bias, where the conclusion comes first and the evidence is molded to fit it. He interviewed dozens of people in the Yakima area, but he prioritized anecdotes that supported his theory and minimized those that didn't. Several interviewees later said their remarks were edited or reframed. Even skeptics reviewing the book, like Sharon A. Hill, admitted it was an array of interviews plagued by loose ends and selective interpretation. Long never conducted a technical analysis of the film. He never examined the first generation or any generation footage or consulted with an optical or biomechanical experts. He was chasing gossip, not data. And that's the big thing. Most of the stuff he gets is gossip. Oh, Roger was this. Oh, Roger was that. Oh, I heard Roger did that. I have Roger doing that. One of the forefathers in debunking Greg Long stuff and these other claims and Bob Hieronymus is the inevitable researcher Roger Knights. In his paper, A Tale of Two Suits, pointed out one glaring example. Hieronymus initially described the costume as a two-piece garment with no zipper, a shirt-like top and drawstring bottoms. Later, it became a single-piece zippered suit identical to Philip Morris's commercial model. Long presented both versions without clarification, glossing over that incompatibility. Another example involves the horsehide quote. Long's book, it appears Hieronymus said that the suit was made of horsehide, but the record shows he was merely repeating what his brother Howard claimed Patterson once mentioned. That's secondhand hearsay misinterpreted as direct testimony. When you combine these editing choices, a pattern emerges. Contradictions are softened, context removed, and weak evidence inflated for the narrative effect. That's not forensic reporting, that's storytelling. Let's talk about the Cal Korff controversy. Cal Korff, of course, wrote the introduction to this book. Now and this is the most colorful figure in this saga, is Cal K. Korff. And people don't realize that many years ago, I had a chance to debate Cal Korff on the Patterson Gimlin film. However, he refused to actually debate face-to-face, or should we say phone-to-phone, because it was a call-in show out of Canada. He didn't show up. He gave his side and left. So, okay, you don't want to defend, because he was afraid of the questions I was going to bring to the table. Some questions like this. Like how he aligned himself with Greg Long and Hieronymus as a self-styled investigator and skeptic. He has appeared in TV documentaries, radio shows, and online forums promoting the hoax narrative as if it was settled fact. But his own background tells a different story. Cal Korff had previously made sensational claims in other fields. The UFOs, the Kennedy assassination, and was known for aggressive self-promotion. He often attacked other researchers while inflating his own credentials. Then in the mid-2000s, he crossed the line. He publicly claimed to be affiliated with Israeli secret services, calling himself a special secret services counterterrorism officer. He appeared wearing a homemade uniform with fake insignias and presented himself as an operative. Investigators and journalists quickly contacted Israeli officials. The Israeli government confirmed that no such agency existed and that Korff had no connection to any intelligence or defense service whatsoever. He later went on to put a video saying, no, people misinterpreted the Israeli secret services is a security company. Wait, what? I'm sorry, a security company? Okay. And he was calling himself Colonel. So basically, you're a colonel in a private security guard company. Okay, you're about as much as a colonel as Colonel Sanders. In fact, Colonel Sanders made great chicken, so I consider him more of a colonel than Korff a colonel. So his entire persona was fabricated. Think about that for a moment. The man helping to debunk the PG film fabricated an intelligence background to appear credible on television. This wasn't just an isolated lapse. It was part of a lifelong pattern. In the UFO community, Korff often had been caught exaggerating his education, misquoting sources, and staging confrontations for publicity. He brought the same behavior into Bigfoot research, interjecting drama where none belonged. When someone builds authority on fiction, everything they touch becomes suspect. So, at this point, we have a pattern that is crystal clear. Hieronymus' story is logistically impossible. Morris's suit doesn't fit the anatomy or the film. Long's journalism is riddled with bias and selective sourcing, as well as fitting his story around a hypothesis rather than fitting the hypothesis to the story. Excuse me. The Fox polygraph show was staged to theater, and Korff, the loudest supporter, fabricated his own credentials. These aren't complementary accounts, they're competing myths propped up by media repetition. Each claim depends on another to survive, yet no one can stand on its own. So in conclusion, what we're really witnessing isn't the exposure of a hoax, it's the creation of one. The so-called debunking of the Patterson film, which has evolved into its own mythology driven by ego, attention, and profit rather than the evidence. And I dare say the profit wasn't as much as it probably was. Meanwhile, the film itself has withstood every attack. It remains anatomically consistent with a real biological organism. Its provenance is verified by lab records, witness statements, and on-site analysis. And despite decades of technological advancements, no one has recreated it convincingly. So when critics say it must be a man in a suit, I say, show me the suit. Show me the logistics, the witnesses, the receipts, the science. Who has them? Roger and Bob have them. Not these guys with this particular story. Just got to say, my mission is simple. We follow the evidence, not echo chambers. We test the claims, verify facts, and when the stories fall apart, we say so plainly. The Patterson Gimlin film continues to stand, not because people want to believe, but because every serious attempt to dismantle it ends up exposing itself instead. And that's it. Thank you, folks. I think it's time for the Q&A. Does any of this, on another note, sound familiar with conspiracy theorists creating their own mythology, publicity over proof, bias over evidence, fabrication over fact? So think about that for a second. Anyway, I think I put Tate to sleep. Uh-oh. Anything?
What is going on? What is going on? Let's go. Let's go. Yes, Tate the Great. Tate the Great. Well, at least I'm not the only person that made a little mistake this time, not having my mic on. Listen, Steve, mic drop. Loved it. Loved everything. Here's my favorite quote. Cal Knopf is as much a colonel as Colonel Sanders. Somebody put that on a t-shirt and I will wear it at a conference in front of everybody. Okay, that is amazing. On top of that, Bob Harmonious, he couldn't have made that drive. Now, I've done some pretty psycho drives, but yeah, it would have had to have been part of the planning, in my opinion. Like, hey, we need this to be almost impossible, so we're going to pay you extra to drive up here and do this crazy drive straight and then go back, you know. And you got to start logically, like, is that what people are doing? Were they that organized back then to create just the most fantastical hoax of all time? You know, logic would say no, but there is a possibility. And also the polygraph. Thank you so much, Steve, for teaching me about that. I never dove into that aspect. And once again, the beauty of conferences, the beauty of these things is that you learn a little something every time. And I don't care how good of a researcher you are. Your dive into disproving these other people's BS, you know, accounts of what happened is fantastic. So thank you, Steve. That was an honor to listen to you drop all that wisdom on us. So fantastic. And then, yeah, I mean, obviously, well, there was so much in that. I actually was taking pictures, so I apologize. I got to ask you later if I'm allowed to have those, because, you know, I've been at enough conferences where, like, you know, you take pictures of that and you die, and I'm not looking toward that. So we're now going to open this up to questions. So hopefully you guys have had a few about the whole thing. And I will just lead with this. We are leaning very positively that this is real. Absolutely. If anybody wants to dabble in the fact that, okay, if it was fake, how could it be? I'm just going to throw a couple facts at you, which I'm glad to get beat up by Steve and Ron and everyone about it. But Roger was from a family, and if you research his family, they were performers, tumblers, acrobats. People always say you couldn't make that walk. You couldn't do it in a suit under those conditions, right? No. The same reason I believe that it's real, you could also go and be like, these are also the only guys that could have pulled this off, because they were that dynamic. Another thing people don't know about Roger is they think he just picked up that camera, rented it, and went out there. He had been practicing for 6 or 7 years. Once again, don't trust me. Go through the mouths that speak it, like Bill Munns and other people. He knew what he was doing with that camera. Also, interesting tidbit of information, once again, from the mouth of people far smarter than I. If it was a 25mm lens that they filmed this on, okay, and this is from the top, and I've already mentioned who I believe the top is, Bill, in terms of evidence analysis. If it was a 25mm lens, which he went out there with the Olympic Project, you know, and they mapped it out and they did it all, then Patty was somewhere between 4'10" and 5'2"-ish. If it was a 26mm lens, then yes, now you're getting into the height 6'3" to 6'7"-ish. You know what I mean? She wasn't big, she wasn't massive, but either more research has to be done to analyze exactly the angle and trees or whatnot, or that what you're seeing in that video is a very small Bigfoot, which is interesting, right? And if you take into account that Roger was a true performer, he was the only person a part of that, or even nowadays that I even know, that could have fallen off a horse, filmed it, but also played the other side and walked in that suit, then it's intriguing to think about those things, you know, because what if this is like the moon landing? What if this is like some other things that have some of us, our cackles raised up in the back? And now I'm not saying that's what it is at all, because I want this stated, and I want it stated clearly. At the end of the day, the person, in my humble opinion, who has really tore through this evidence and seen every copy of the Patterson Gimlin film, every copy, and has a version of every copy, is Bill Munns. And Bill Munns believes to this day that what you are seeing is a real animal, is a real thing, after looking at everything. And what people don't know is on that final episode, or maybe you remember, of Finding Bigfoot, we tore through the Bigfoot Museum there. And here's what's awesome about research. Here's why you do not stop, even when the whole world, even when your own body and you're like, I'm over it, I can't get there. You push further, because it was the very last box, after tearing through in a full day of going through all the old boxes in the Bigfoot Museum. We got to the last box and we found a film canister from Beckshord, which Beckshord is its own, you know, a lot of people don't like Beckshord, but you should appreciate him because he was wide out. He was into everything. But with that said, we found a version of the Patterson Gimlin film at Bigfoot Museum Bluff Creek, and it was amazing. That's one of the best moments of my life ever, and I haven't really shared that with a lot of people, but it was awesome. And to find that with Bill and to watch Bill's eyes light up, like all of our eyes light up when we talk about this, and when wonderful speakers like Emily and Nikki and Ron and Steve like enlighten us with new evidence, things that we just hadn't even thought of or whatever. I saw that on Bill Munn's face, and it's one of my favorite moments of being a Bigfooter. So anyway, I'm not saying that it isn't real, but I'm also not saying that it couldn't have been done by men that dynamic. So we're going to open up questions now, and we can take it in any direction you want. And we're going to lean on the wisdom of these great speakers that you've heard today. So Tate, let us open this up to a wild and fun discussion on everything we've heard today. Well, we lost Steve. I knew the aliens were going to abduct him eventually. You can't be that clever and not get abducted. I'm sorry. Ah, he did it. He did it. Yeah. Oh, I love you, bud.
Steve's not the only one with a costume change. I changed the sweater I was wearing.
Oh, you did. You're in the Pabst Blue Ribbon. It is the best. It is the best. People can say what they want.
Exactly.
So
here's the shirt.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And Steve, thank you. Nikki, thank you. Ron, thank you. Your wisdom, your guidance, your openness to share with all of us your wisdom and encourage us to keep pushing, even through all the BS that is thrown at it these days is awesome. So thank you very much. I learned stuff and I was wildly entertained. So, and also thank you, Tate, for putting it together. And with that said, Tate, let's take some answers. Let's get wild.
Yeah, we just gotta find some now. Just see.
I think wherever I have the first one.
So, Steve, it feels like you would know this one pretty well.
From my understanding, it's Patricia Patterson that still has the original copy. The last copyright on the Patterson Gimlin film that I can find was from, I believe, it was right after Renee Dahinden's death. And it went back to Patricia Patterson and Robert Gimlin. So that's where the original must lie.
Yeah, and also Bill has a copy of absolutely everything. So anybody who really is passionate, I would get as close to Bill. I have not been able to contact Bill as of late, so I don't know what's going on with Bill. I hope he's okay, but he's got a version that is blown up to 5x7, which I believe is 24 or 8, some kind of crazy K that doesn't even really exist. And it's amazing. But something interesting to know about that, even when you blow it up to that size with today's technology, because of the way it was shot, it's still only going to be good to like a half an inch. So for me, like you would think, oh, you get the camera original, like it's going to have this clarity that is just going to lock you in. This is real. It won't. That's not how film works. So just temper your expectations, even if you ever do get a really high grade version of it.
So here's another one. Steve, it's to you again.
Sure. Yeah, it was. I ran, truthfully, one of my AI bots on it. Said, "Does the scaling look proper?" And there was a difference according to the AI with the ground leveling. That it put Hieronymus a little bit higher than he should have been based on what it was. So it just merely corrected that a bit. The other huge thing is, and I don't know if anybody has seen the John Green footage that was scaled similarly using a similar camera, using the 6 foot, I believe 8 Jim or 6'5" Jim McLaren. Mm-hmm. And you can see that Patty, when the scale, the trees were the same scale behind it. He walked in the same area. He walked in. I mean, there's the log. I mean, it was done within a year of the actual Patterson Gimlin film. And Jim McLaren is kind of dwarfed a little bit by Patty. Patty is a lot taller than Jim McLaren was, and Jim McLaren was 6'5". So that would be probably the more realistic one to use rather than my corrected shot or even, lazy shot trying to line Hieronymus up with him. The corrected one probably would have been right at the event that was filmed at the event. That way the trees in the back were properly scaled to be the same size. You find one object in the film that you get and you can scale it to the other size and everything should line up perfectly. And that's what was done with the John Green film.
That's, I think Patty's step length was measured, wasn't it? But I don't know if it was. If it was, we don't know still. We're trying to figure that out. Do you know, Steve?
No idea. I believe it may have been, but again, I'm not really an expert on the PG film itself. I have looked at the Hieronymus claims and how that all fell apart.
I feel like the Bluff Creek Project has measured her step length. They know her path pretty well. I'm pretty sure about that, but I don't know about the step length itself.
Right. And as far as getting back, I just want to get back to the one thing about comparisons where you're comparing Bob Hieronymus. Yes, I agree that both of them were that was just done as a reference, real quick. Whether it was Lazy's or not, I didn't know who it belonged to. It wasn't anybody wasn't necessarily targeted for that. But you can't really compare a subject with another subject without something common in the film that you can take scale from. So that's the problem there. So, of course, my image was probably garbage because the one that came in, unfortunately, is garbage too because there's no common denominator in the film. I mean, you can scale Hieronymus however much you want to make him look like Patty. The bottom line is that I just let the thing wing it to see what it had to say. But the real true way to do it would be the way John Green had done it by going to the actual site where there's stuff that, you have the unsub here, you have the object here, and now you have a new guy here. We know his height, his known height estimate. Here's the log in front of it. Done. And there was a North American Sciences Institute, NASI, back in the 90s, did all sorts of information on there. And that, okay, and that's fine too. Again, proportions the same thing. You got to still, anytime you're scaling something, blowing it up, widening it, you got to have a common point to reference that. Been doing this for over 25 years. You got to have a common reference. That's why when I debunked the fence climber video, I knew the height of that fence. I was there. So stuff like that, you gotta know a height of something that's common in the film.
Okay.
And you can say nope all you want, but you're wrong.
This one's a good one. But the kind of like that notion that Bob wore a suit for Roger in a different place. What do you think, Steve?
It's possible, but as far as I knew, the only any film that was taken or photos, there was a couple of photos circulating online where Bob Gimlin was dressed as a Native American, which you knew there was a Native American in that 76 film, Sasquatch, The Legend of Bigfoot. And that was Roger's idea that the director producer of that show took from Roger Patterson. Now Roger Patterson had been gone a number of years at that point, and just developed the film from there. So
I believe it was Bob Titmus that told Roger that there was activity in Bluff Creek, and that's why Roger and Bob ended up down there.
I may have been Bob Titmus.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think it was Bob Titmus that had told him, not Bob Gimlin.
No, I did say Bob Titmus.
Oh, did you?
Wait, did I say Gimlin?
Well, I'm reading that.
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
Oh,
You said
okay.
Titmus.
Yeah.
You haven't had enough Snapple yet. You said it right.
I was just okay.
Yeah. I haven't had enough.
I think it was footprints, right? It was footprints that they found.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Western Bigfoot Exploration says Al Hodgson told them.
Yeah. Well, I think Al Hodgson was one of it. I'm trying to see that comment here.
And that's what makes this an amazing film, because you have never had such a detailed timeline with what we would call corroborative witnesses or secondary witnesses. In other words, you have Al Hodgson, who wasn't there, didn't see a Bigfoot, but he can attest that these guys came in here a certain time. This is what they said. This is the way they behaved. They move on to the next person. Aldell Atlee, same thing. So you have all these motions. People say, yeah, this is what they said. I do that a lot in my Bigfoot investigations. Somebody says, the husband sees it or the wife sees it. I usually interview the spouse. Well, what did they say when they came in?
Still looking for some questions here. If anybody still has any questions they want to ask, put them all in caps so we can see them easier.
Type it like my grandfather and my father.
Yeah.
And my father before them.
That's right.
And
right.
Riddle it with misspellings and everything.
And if people end up diving, just while we're looking into the full story of what happened after they gathered this evidence that is should be the most wildly profound thing found in the last 100 years, the waters rose and they were going to get stuck there and they had to get out. Literally, if you're truly into this, I would invite you to dig into the full story of what happened from the filming all the way to getting out of there and them having to race across the river as the water rose, to them getting stuck on a mountain trail, like on a logging road, and Bob actually having to get out, go up and get machinery to come down to clear it so they can get out. It plays, the whole thing plays like how it should have never happened. It should have been impossible. But once again, who were the two men in charge of this expedition? They were the two most dynamic, ridiculous, badass men America had to offer at that moment. And that is why this survived and got all the way out. So if you're curious, I would say dig deeper into it. It's a movie that should be made, in my very, very, very humble opinion.
Yes.
Yeah.
I 100% agree.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing. They should have killed each other, but they didn't,
Thankfully they didn't. Do I think we'll ever get another audio sample of Bigfoots like the Sierra sounds? We're out there enough. I think eventually we will. Someone will. It just takes a lot of effort, really. Ron, what do you think?
I think the Sierra sounds are interesting because for me, it's one of those examples of evidence that is compelling enough to really make you want to think it's evidence, but then also there's enough controversy in it, and there's not enough detail to kind of it's right down the middle there, on what I would consider that controversy of Bigfoot evidence. But despite some claims of the tracks not looking good that are associated with that camp, I think that the audio says a lot. I think it's suggestive of something being out there, but I think it's if we're going to entertain it as real audio evidence, we have to look at it will the circumstances ever present themselves again to where these animals will display this? And it's not everyday normal behavior that Bigfoot just vocalizes to that capacity. This is extended, audited, edited down for a presentation, for an entertainment piece for volumes 1 and 2. Everything you've heard from the Sierra sounds are a trimmed down version of extensive audio, if we're believing that it's real, and that these are very unique displays of Bigfoot interacting with humans, not just everyday Bigfoot vocalizations of courtship displays or long distance communication or whatever behavioral gestures that everyday vocalizations could imply. So it's you have to be in a context where Bigfoot perceives humans as a threat, but is kind of mulling over in their mind that maybe they're not so bad. And it's just you're seeing a whole psychological process going on in those films if we're looking at them as legitimate within the context of what are humans? Are they bad? I'm upset, but maybe I can condition myself to being around them. Like it's such a unique display of Bigfoot and human interaction. And I don't know if circumstances with them being as rare as they are, and also like adapting their behaviors within different populations and within the modern setting. Like, it's just like, I don't know if that will ever present itself like that again. Like, sure, we can get some compelling Bigfoot audio if we do long-term audio projects, but like, I don't know if we'll ever quite capture something as extensive and comprehensive as the Sierra sounds. And that's under that suspicion that they are like authentic.
Can I jump in on this though? But it's someone like you, Ron, that is badass enough to go that remote, to go beyond your fear, where most of us, we're still tucked around the fire researching, that could discover that, right? Because what are a few things that make these incidences happen more? When there's less travel. So this is a time before they really understood that we were even onto them or whatnot, right? So you go out to this camp and they had established, as we had discussed before, a habit of going to the same spot. So it felt safe. They obviously weren't there to hunt them. They were just another apex predator that showed up. And another element of that, which I think people overlook, is where were they very, very, very close to, which I think is a profound, it's one of those things that people need to pay attention to. They were near a natural spring. And in my humble opinion, the biggest apex predators are near the cleanest, purest, best water. It's just, water is life. So they were near that as well. So I guess what I'm saying, and I mean it, if it causes controversy and great conversation, great. But I believe someone like yourself that has the balls to go further than anyone goes. Do research on how far people actually go off trail in parks or everything. It's less than a mile. Nobody really explores anything anymore. They don't. So it's gonna take the next level. It's gonna ushering in the next golden age of exploration, that I believe that's the only way you're gonna get something as profound in that, if it's real.
I have one
You want a
point
skeptic's take?
on the Sierra sounds. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. My take on this. Now, my understanding is we do have a little short excerpt, right, that everybody plays of the Sierra sounds, but there's actually 8-9 hours longer, okay? And we just hear this one. So why, after all these years, that's the only conversation of two possible Bigfoot like that? You get a lot of conversation, a lot of audio of howls or knocks, clicks, grunts, whatever you have, but we don't ever have again a conversation, what is thought to be a conversation between two hairy hominids out there in the woods. Whether they were out there for months and months and getting that, I don't know if you want to call it getting them used to them or what, but there are a lot of researchers out there who have audio out there for months and months at a time and aren't capturing that again. I don't think we're ever going to see something like that again in that form. It may be out there, and there's a lot of people who say, oh, well, they're in my backyard every night, so I don't need, that kind of confirmation that they're out there. But always with, these type of products that are put out there, I like to look at the end goal. What was that end goal for putting that stuff out there? And can it be repeated? And that's the biggest thing. These things can't and have not been repeated. I know there are tons of people with great audio that are like, whoa, that's incredible. But you repeat it over and over. Yeah. All the stuff that Kaiju Ninja Tristan has are some really crazy audios. and many others. There's many others that the one, Steve, you guys got up there at that camp out
up in Whitehall. Yep.
Holy cow, that just gives you the shivers up and down when you hear that. And it's amazing. You know, those are still are valid part of research and collecting data for sure. But something this big that was put out of a whole conversation like that, it makes me wonder. It really makes me wonder if it's.
I have one closing point on that too. Is there's a term I use a lot. It's called anthropomorphism, and that's giving human-like qualities to other animals. And even primatology, there's been examples in primatology where primatologists have accidentally used anthropomorphism to try to figure out what the chimps and gorillas were doing. They're like, oops, we were wrong. It's because of this. So when I hear a conversation between two Sasquatch, that sounds a little bit anthropomorphic to me a bit. But what leads me to believe another thing is when the Scott Nelson, who does this analysis on it, and mind you that you cannot do a proper analysis on just one sample. You know, so Sierra Sounds is one sample. Well, give me samples from the other parts of the country and add them into that study, and then you'll have something more scientifically valid. But he talks about language, and there's a language in there. Well, of course, that proves another point that it could be just anthropomorphism. Because if I'm going to fake something, I'm not going to be thinking like a real Sasquatch. I'm going to be thinking like a human trying to think like a Sasquatch, and anthropomorphism seeps into that. So that could be a very big reason. Not saying it is. I went in believing it, and now after many years, nobody repeating it, like Nikki said, I'm kind of having my doubts.
Good
point, Alex. Good point. A lot of people hearing chatter and stuff like that out there, mumbles. But we're, you know.
And as far as there was a YouTuber who imitated the samurai chatter almost to a T.
Ooh, you gotta tell me who that is. I want to watch that.
I wish I could remember. My co-host, I think, found it, but I lost it. I had it, and then I lost it in one of the hard drive crashes I had.
I think I've got it on my liked videos on YouTube, Tate. I can send it your way.
Dude, yes. I really want to.
He's pretty spot on.
Too.
The guy's pretty good, yeah.
Send it my way, too, if you could. That would be awesome.
So, and a couple of things to consider, too. Like, everywhere you go in the country and the world, there are regional dialects, right? And this is an interesting question to kind of throw out to the group members, but I think the majority of the time that we are interacting in whatever way we're interacting with Bigfoot, we're interacting with juveniles. Because I don't know about you, but I broke rules when I was that age. I went against mom and dad at that age, and I would have spoke at that age. And in my humble opinion, if you are an ambush predator that relies on stealth and quiet, you don't talk. Talking is spell casting. Talking can mislead. You only judge people on their actions. Never judge them on what they're saying, right? It's your actions that back it up. Why do I love all these speakers today? Because their actions back up that of a valid researcher. They're in it to win it. And when by win it, I mean by truth. Anyway, all I'm saying is that I think that maybe, if it's true, he stumbled upon juveniles that weren't afraid to like let the guard down and throw out some old garble, because who was that guy? And somebody can answer this better than I. He was either CIA or something that began to break down the language and found that there were all these different Native American languages within it, meaning either they speak that or they were throwing that out to mess with them, which is really interesting. So I just propose that. I propose that everywhere you go, there's a different name, there's a different tinge to the language, there's different vernacular and everything, and maybe they did stumble across something that was truly unique. And then those young Bigfoot went home afterwards and they got their butts whooped for talking.
But then again, with the addition of alleged Native American language in their babble, that could be anthropomorphism of the analyst trying to listen to it too, as one.
Sure.
And number two, we're talking about a creature that has not adapted the use of fire. right? And there is a correlation with intelligence of fire use and language that we're the only two that tend to do that. And that's huge too. So I think that if they're not going to make complicated tools, which we know they don't, they're not going to use fire. What makes us think that they could create a complicated language as our own? And how would they teach that? It goes against like all the glyphs and everything like that. Like, well, who would teach them? You know, if they're teaching them that and passing off this symbolic language or this verbal language type, why aren't they using fire? Why aren't they making complicated tools? Because those are all things that came in progression before complicated languages.
Sure. Yeah. Anyone else on anything absolutely wonderful in there? Language and the pursuit, you know. Now listen, I do know this. If you're smart enough, you snap the bones open of the animals that you eat as an apex predator and you eat the bone marrow. What does that increase in you? Gray matter in your brain. It makes you smarter. It takes you to the point. And Steve, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I ain't messing with you, buddy.
Sure,
I ain't messing with the squatch detective. But mimicry, right? If I was alone in the woods and I had no distractions and I am of limited intelligence, right? I could mimic every single animal out there and every single person speaking. I could mimic every sound. I can almost do that, you know, in a way now, but not even close. So maybe it wasn't even talking. Maybe it was messing. You know what I mean?
And that's entirely possible. Just like that's more of a possibility too.
Yeah.
Than a language. They're trying to imitate us or whatever. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I would add just a little bit to that, saying that the propensity or the ability for language, you know, based off of cognitive capacity, like would be like a testament to the comprehensive behavioral traits of like a higher primate. But like the systems that would have to be in place to spread a consistent language, like to any degree of deliberate use, might not be in place. So they might be able to speak, they might be able to be taught to speak, or might have and when they're interested, they would be exploring the ability to form a language or talk or express something new, but they might not have anything like any record keeping or personal, you know, like a spread of that behavior across generations. So like maybe what that would say is, I mean, the context there seems to be in place where they were interested, either felt threatened by the hunters and wanted to learn more about them, or they were interested in them just in general, and they were engaging with a display. Like, I don't know. I think that the recordings are interesting and they're so unique, but I see where they
all I can think about is Mike Flower. You know, that's all I can think about when we talk about this language. You know, is it goes back to the bad stuff. So,
well, I mean, we think about Bluff Creek and how we've had some trusted friends say that they've heard phrases attempted and they seemed a little bit off. And I mean, I don't know, like I'm just trying to put myself in a position of a Bigfoot whose brain works differently than mine in, I'm sure, many ways. But like, I'm just sitting there wondering, like, if testing syllables and attempting an imitation while they're there, like they're just crouched behind something and they're like, buenos dias, you know, like. So I don't know. I don't know how they're thinking out there. I don't know what their chain of thought is, but I think that
it also lends to the theory that there are many different types of Bigfoot. You may have some that are more human-like and some that are more ape-like, and that could also lend to those who can pick up mimicking better than those who don't and are said to be more savage or mean. You know, you've got encounters where Bigfoots trash campgrounds, have hit trailers, have thrown rocks, and then you have some that are saying they are timid and nice, and you know, they let you see them and then they're gone. Or so that could also lend to that.
And
Like,
that's a great point, because that's not even like language barrier, that's cultural. And we all know chimps, especially the chimpanzees, have cultures that different groups do different things. Some are predators, some will predate on other primates, which is very unusual. Some will do certain behaviors. It's all what's available to them, and that makes a lot of sense, which to me adds to the credibility of this mystery, that in certain areas, maybe they're closer to civilization. So maybe they're more of a scavenger type of eater. They may be out far in the forest where they're more of a predator type of creature. So I agree 1,000%.
Seamless transition into answering that next question, by the way.
Yep. Yeah, you're welcome.
But hey, another really fascinating thing. We were talking about AI and the use of AI within our research and using it with a grain of salt. But within 10 generations, if just this group walked into the woods and we let go of all of this and we just began, within 10 generations, you would begin to look wild, right? Like wild. Within 100 generations, you would freak people out. Your hair would grow, everything would grow. Within 1,000 generations, and I'm just going to let this set fire to this, you'd look like Bigfoot. And we can go into the details. We can break it down. But everything that you would do, from the hair growing in your body, from us going back to a very basic apex predator sense, where the largest breed, the best breed, everyone would get bigger. If you begin, if the crawl on the ground happens, your shoulders would grow. Everything would get more massive. The only aspect of the human body that could not mimic everything we are seeing in Bigfooting is the sagittal crest. But given the increase of the shoulders, the forward slump, the fact that you look like, Beowulf or a linebacker on Crack Humpty, it could give the illusion from certain angles that you did have that actual sagittal crest. But all I'm saying is that until anybody proves or disproves it, there is nothing that tells me that it couldn't simply be Homo sapiens sapien that is simply gone native or wild 100% in the woods. Do I want it to be something else? Of course. I want Loch Ness to be a plesiosaur. Giant eel.
But if you look at the foot structure itself, and the sagittal crest, and that would, and the absence of a neck, that would take a different DNA structure than a Homo sapien.
But if the foot is big enough, and I'm just playing, Steve, I'm not going against you. If the foot is big enough and you simply just stand up on your toes, boom, mid-tarsal break.
Right, but the development of an actual mid-tarsal break, flat-footedness, no small hypothalamus, and you look at that foot flat-footed, that would take a change in DNA structure, similar to the way dogs and wolves have different DNA. Dogs were all wolves at one point in time, but they evolved as they came into our home. So very similar, but they have different DNA. And what happens is that DNA will change over time to add those features in. For example, Paranthropus, if it is related to a Bigfoot, it did not go extinct. It actually evolved into what we know now as a Sasquatch.
I love that.
Well, somewhere down the line, it got an additional DNA strand to throw in it to tapetum lucidum, the eye shine structure in the eyes.
Sure.
So that, to me, so they're not going to have the same necessary footprint. They may have evolved from Homo sapiens, they may have evolved from Paranthropus, but they're not the same exact DNA structure. We would be able to tell the difference.
Sure. And I don't adhere to evolution personally, and I know that's a bigger thing. I'm about adaptation. We've got evidence now of things switching like that, being able to give birth when they couldn't give birth, and really interesting things. So I know that's a bigger deep dive into it all. But yeah, it's just fascinating. It's because until we prove it, right? Until somebody really goes, no, man, I got this one right here, right? Renee DeHinden was correct in the most awful way, meaning until we have a body to study, nobody knows.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case. But this is a good question to end the night on, or the evening, I should say. Ron, I'm curious to hear what you think on this question.
On the urban areas versus way out in the woods, I feel like it
Use Taco Bell.
I mean, yeah, I would be looking in unconventional places
Poop.
from time to time, like if you're
Everywhere.
on the fringe, you know. But I don't know. I think that there would be a way more of an acknowledgement from them that humans are in the area. And am I like, my mic seems a bit quiet, but
Okay.
I think that there's a little bit more of an acknowledgement of like human activity. There would be a little bit more of a hyper awareness, I believe, of humans and their regular activities if you're in a urban or outside the fringe of an urban area versus going out into like a very distant place. The other thing that so I think that individuals closer to human habitated areas would be harder to experience. That there might be more experiences in general because you've got Bigfoot lives intersecting human lives, and you need both of those components for an encounter, is the human to see them and the individual. But I think that with Bigfoot in the wilderness area, you know, I think that the differences are they have access to more mature and lucrative habitats when they're off the beaten path. That's why I try to go to the places where I go, is to find more ecologically rich areas, because I think that I can provide that half of the Bigfoot encounter that is the human to witness them. And I can go with recorders and cameras to capture those moments if they occur. But I think that I have a better chance of encountering Bigfoot if I go to an area that sustains a larger population. So while there might be one Bigfoot on the outskirts of some Denver, Colorado suburb that has been seen 37 times, if the habitat isn't there, I'm looking for one individual. If the habitat 5 miles north of there is where his extended family lives, and there's 12 individuals, I want to put myself in the middle of those 12, because then I have a potential to encounter 12 different individuals instead of that one. It's not about chasing down the single Bigfoot. It's about putting yourself in the center. And that's similar to what primate researchers like Jane Goodall, Diane Fossey did with their subjects of study.
Sure. And can I just add this to answer it? What differences might there be in searching for Bigfoot in the urban areas? Don't burn bridges, build bridges. Because if that's happening in an urban area, they're cohabitating. And my advice would be your best foot forward there is to make friends and approach the subject wanting a genuine experience before finding proof and being able to share it with all of us. Just go in wanting to truly be enlightened and make friends, because that's the only way that's going to work. But they definitely move through everything. They are so, dude, imagine any of us, like, imagine you being a teenager and wanting to like sneak through or sneak out when your parents were born. When your parents are sleeping, right? Like, you're going to do outrageous, amazing things. And I think they do that all the time, because we are this is us now. Why don't we see anything? Because my head is up my ass.
It's so true. And it's funny because, like, yeah, I don't really think there is a difference to a Bigfoot, whether it's an urban area or in the woods, you know, because I think about where I got my thermal video. You're relatively not that far from town. And it's really close. So I just, like, I think what RPG said, they just act like children and they get caught sometimes with their hand in a cookie jar.
Can I quote my friend Brent Dill from the Tall Ones always says this. He says, we're never going to find or hunt or look for Bigfoot. They're going to find us. So it's up to us to put ourselves into situations where we could run into one, right? We need to be out there and just wait for an encounter to happen, because they're the ones that are going to run into us. We're not going to go out there looking for them.
Exactly.
You always got to make them feel like they're in control.
Yes.
Always.
And like what Emily is creating, I do think Freeman caught something. Now we can discuss that and whether it's real footage or not. But if you can narrow it down to where you believe the evidence points to this is the best spot for you to go on the reg, to wait at the right times and move with nature. Move at dusk and dawn. Move when nature moves. We're so disconnected from nature. That's what our culture does, that you have the best chance. So I do think research and narrowing it down, and Ron, you're talking about it, see, habitat areas and whatnot, and then finding the right spot where you think they're migrating or moving through, and just go. And I think you might have a chance. And then your hardest struggle is going to be when you actually see it, to go, oh my God, I can't tell anyone about this. I can't tell anybody. I can't tell anybody.
Remember,
that's what I think about, is like, if you're fortunate enough to make that discovery, is society ready for that knowledge to become accessible? And I don't know. I'm a little bit divided depending on the day. There's some things I make me optimistic about humanity, but also, I mean, there's a lot that I wouldn't want to push a chain of events into action and lose control over what I think should be the protection of this species, so that we can learn from them more,
Yeah.
And they have a right to be here as well. So I wouldn't want to force society's hand to make a decision about them, because right now society doesn't always make great decisions.
But then again, they have been here for years, and I don't think that if we said all of a sudden they're real, that we're going to be able to because I believe the numbers of them are so minute or minuscule per state. You know, how many other animals are so hard to find that literally, whether we know they're real or not, or the government acknowledges they're real or not, it's not going to make much of a big difference on their population. If anything, it could be for the betterment, by saying, hey, we know they exist, so let's get a law, and they're a primate, let's get a law quickly because we know they're not numerous, boom, they're protected. I think that would be the natural progression. And I don't think anybody, in us being part of the primate community, because we all look at a television and see a gorilla poached and we're like, oh, that's horrible, right? Mm-hmm. That's part of our primate family instinct. So I don't think it's going to be a hard stretch that if they're proven to be real, that it'll be pretty quick that they'll protect them because of their primate status and their rarity.
Yeah, not to sidebar too hard, but I'm finding Bigfoot. We went to Oklahoma, and in Oklahoma, at the convergence of two rivers, which Patrick had just said they follow the streams in. I think they do. You float in that with your head up at night, and you cruise like it's a water slide. But they put a video out, and this was early 90s. This was right when the internet was start doing it. And they caught something because in their grease trap behind, something was opening up. The grease trap was 6 feet off the ground, and then the trap higher than that. So it was way off the ground, and it was being opened. So they said, put a camera up. Who's stealing from this? And they put a camera up, and they saw the camera was apparently set up 9 feet roughly high in the air, and this thing ducked as it went under it to go back and use a stick, as we know great apes do, to get some ants. And the owner of the casino said, burn this video, do not do anything. They put it online for 1 day. 1 day. If anyone can get that footage, I think that would be unbelievably profound. 1 day. And guess what happened? Guess how human beings, Homo sapiens sapien, responded to what could have been the greatest find of all time. Every single thing with eye shine within 2 miles of that casino, bison, dogs, everything, deer, dead. That's how we deal. We don't want anything more capable than us to be around. It scares us. So a real question is if you do capture it, and you do, how do you release it in a way where all these people that have actually shot one, what do they all say? I've never hunt again. You look in their eyes and you see the humanity. You see that there's something smart about them. I would never have if I've known. How do you prepare people for that? You don't. It's a monster in our culture as of right now, and it is not a monster. Go back to Native American wisdom. It is a lost tribe. It is our lost brothers. It is another part of us, or adaptation, evolution, whatever you adhere to. So anyway, I just find that really fascinating. And yeah, I'd be scared. If I've actually got the next Patterson Gimlin film, I may show you guys, but I don't know if I'd go public.
Again,
yeah.
could be cultural too.
Could be. Yeah, it could be.
And they all shot over there. They shot it for what particular reason. It's like a lot of people ask about the government conspiracy thing. And I think that it's not like this big, not like the UAP topic. I think it's like the local type of cover up where I don't want a bunch of guys running around here with guns or a bunch of whacks running around my community. So I'm going to cover the tracks up. We're going to say this is going to be our cover story for it that way.
Yeah.
I think I trust humanity as a whole, or the general public's opinion on these things. But it's the power structures that navigate around concepts of like empathy and considerations that I think that are the dangerous things to the Bigfoot species. So it's elements of humanity, not humanity as a whole,
Right.
because I think right now we would like rally to do everything we could to protect them. And force legislation like to be observant and considerate for them. But that's a process, and we don't always get what we want from our representatives. So like that's that until we understand like what we need as a collective society. I don't know if it might be better that they're a bit hidden.
Yeah, I mean, as a collective society too. I mean, think about the last time we killed something to mass extinction. I mean, it hasn't been recent.
Look at the American
It's been a
bison.
while ago, so
Carrier
we've
pigeon.
kind of learned a bit.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will stick.
Yeah, I think we're getting there.
Yeah.
Nikki, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? Give us the perspective.
See smoke coming out of her ears.
I'm thinking that this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed coming here and chit-chatting about Bigfoot. It's my favorite topic for sure. I think we have a lot of talented people out there. I think it gets hidden by a lot of the mush out there. But we need to keep doing what we're doing. Everybody's in this for their own journey. So some people love the stories and love the encounter stuff. And, we're flooded by channels that give them those stories. And that's okay. And then there's, the science side of people wanting more, who want to keep asking more. And I think that's okay too. So we just keep doing what we're doing and have fun with it. The minute it doesn't get fun, then I'm out,
Couldn't have said any better myself.
Thank you. And I'm going to have an after show. If you guys want to join, you're welcome to.
Oh, awesome. Well, Tate, is there anything else you'd like to enlighten us with, by the way, besides proper beard care or research with you and Ron, which I cannot wait to see your first video together. It's going to be spectacular.
Yeah, I got a video coming out tomorrow. It's called 8mm Bigfoot on Bluff Creek. So it's going to look like it was filmed in 8mm. It's going to look cool. It's very nostalgic. And that comes out tomorrow on the 20th.
Awesome.
But no tips on beard care, so I can't help you there.
Well, I cannot speak for Tate, because if you know Tate, then you know that he is a unique individual within the space that somehow is a bridge and combines us all together in the most wild way. And when you were talking, Ron, before about broadcasting a giant thing that looked like magic, the first time I ever experienced a projector in the woods throwing up what you would have expected at a rave in Europe somewhere, like was with Tate. And I remember sitting there, and I'll be honest, at first I hated it. I was like, this has nothing to do with nature. And then I was like, but you know what? If I was an intelligent species that was in the woods, and I will always go back to the youth or to the teenagers of that species, the ones more inclined to make mistakes, I would have thought that was the coolest thing going on maybe that whole year. So I want to commend you for that. And I also want to hate you for that, because until it's proven, I don't know which way to feel. But I experienced that with you, Tate, and that was awesome. And thank you. And I also left that place, and my son left that place with more mosquito bites than we have ever gotten on any expedition of all time. That's all I can tell you. Florida at the wrong time of the year is like the Amazon or Australia. Don't go.
It's gnarly.
It's gnarly.
Everything wants to kill you.
Everything, or eat you just slowly. Just the blood. But Tate will close us out. But honestly, Steve, Ron, Nikki, Emily, I know you had to go. You're amazing. Thank you. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for educating us. Thank you for educating me as someone who has been a lifelong purveyor of all of this. And I still learned something new today. And my advice to anyone in this, enter it with an open heart and incredible curiosity about the space, and never dig so deep that you miss out on some of the wisdom that these amazing researchers are giving you. And that's my 2 cents.
A round of applause for everybody.
Yeah. Yep.
You too, RPG. You're pretty kick ass.
Tate pays me. He pays me. No. Hey, your cat stole the show. Let's just be honest. Your cat stole the show.
Every time.
No one cares about you, Ron.
Okay. Trailing cats. Yes.
Mine floats in the back sometimes. She'll sit up here and it looks like she's floating.
Oh. Steve.
I'm going to go ahead and take you guys backstage. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Thank you to RPG, Nikki, Steve, and Ron for their amazing work tonight. I had a fun time behind the scenes, and but we pulled it off, and it was a good time. Again, I appreciate everybody for joining the live chat, everybody watching at home, and again, the speakers and RPG. It was really great. So until next time, or until I do something like this again, I will see you in my next video, which comes out tomorrow. So be sure to watch that and enjoy that. All right, have a good night, everybody.